There are some problems here. Sorry, big time.
I'm so upset. Oh my God.
Bigot! All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. She's wearing the fire dress, so you better watch out. Fire's headed in your direction. So speaking of fire headed in our direction, Netanyahu has ordered us back into the war. We're gonna give you the clips in a minute or tell you about exactly what he said. He actually gave us 3 different directives. We'll tell you what they are and our chances of following them, which is very high. But then one of the top neocons in the country and in the world says we've already lost in Iran. That was shocking. So we'll bring that to you guys.
Oh, a cheerleader for the war is admitting now that the war is a failure and maybe our best option is to end it and just admit that we failed.
That is shocking because they never admit that. So that is amazing. Then AOC versus MTG. That's a fascinating discussion and debate we'll have later. And we've got a poll on it for you guys. And then, the usual litany of Democrats selling out, Republicans being terrible guys. You got it. Let's do it.
All right, let's begin with the latest updates in the war against Iran.
Meaning the ceasefire remains in place?
It's unbelievably weak. I would say, I would call it the weakest right now. After reading that piece of garbage they sent us, I didn't even finish reading it. They said, I'm not gonna waste my time reading it. I would say it's one of the weakest right now. It's on life support. They understand, these are all medical people. Dr. Oz, life support is not a good thing, do you agree?
Bad prognostic.
I would say the ceasefire is on massive life support, where the doctor walks in and says, sir, your loved one has approximately a 1% chance of living.
There you have President Trump talking about the ceasefire with Iran being on life support, as opposed to the reputation of this country, which is also on life support. And is it really a coincidence that President Trump rejected Iran's peace proposal on the same day CBS News aired their 60 Minutes episode with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in which he said that the war ain't over yet? Cenk, what do you think?
No, I don't believe it's a coincidence. So we're about to find out a couple of interesting things here. Number one, to what degree are we controlled by Israel? And we are now getting to 11 out of 10 because of this story. You'll see the details here. And what is making Donald Trump go back into the war? Not just Israel, but his overconfidence on a couple of directions. So we'll talk about both of those things after Anna. We've been given by Israel.
So in order to really understand this story, we're gonna just take a little dip in the Netanyahu interview pool. He was interviewed by Major Garrett on 60 Minutes, and he was asked by Garrett if the war is over, and if it isn't, who will decide when it is? Netanyahu responded with the following, quote, "The Iran war accomplished a great deal, but it's not over because there's still nuclear material, enriched uranium, that has to be taken out of Iran. There are still enrichment sites that have to be dismantled. There are still proxies that Iran supports. There are ballistic missiles that they still want to produce. Now we've degraded a lot of it, but all that is still there, and there's still work to be done." Okay, so basically that's his way of saying the war isn't over yet. He pretends to be concerned about the enriched uranium. That's always been a cover story. He doesn't care about the enriched uranium. He just wants to keep bombing Iran until he gets a failed state or a regime change. The other thing that he mentions are the ballistic missiles, as if a sovereign country doesn't have the right to have this type of weaponry in order to defend themselves, especially in a region of the world where they have a hostile country like Israel in existence. Now Garrett asked in response, so this war cannot end until all those things are eliminated? To which Netanyahu declared, Can it end with, as President Trump has led now, a blockade, an economic pressure on them to do it with non-military means? Fine. If it can be accomplished, why not? But if not, both the United States and Israel, we both agree, President Trump and I, that if necessary, we can re-engage them militarily if it's necessary. Now, I want to be clear that re-engaging militarily will accomplish absolutely nothing. There's no indication that the United States would be able to retrieve that enriched uranium, besides which, obviously, that material has been separated and hidden in different areas of the country. On top of that, the enriched uranium isn't even something that the Israelis really give a damn about. Again, that was the cover story. There's no indication that Iran will stop with their ballistic missiles, nor should they. I wouldn't if I were Iran or a leader in Iran. So re-engaging militarily does absolutely nothing. It accomplishes absolutely nothing. But Netanyahu doesn't want the war to end, which is why I believe, yes, Cenk, Israel controls the United States when it comes to foreign policy, certainly 100%. And okay, fine, you want to re-engage. But I think Iran needs to rethink their strategy, and you need to make Israel cry uncle. Because the person who decides whether or not this war ends, unfortunately, is not the president of the United States. It's the prime minister of Israel. So make him cry uncle. That's what I think. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so two things. We're about to find out all together if it's 100%.
Let's please stop having these nonsensical debates.
Okay, it's not a debate. It's not a debate. Look, guys, I'm just telling you ahead of time, so you can see with your own eyes. So you don't have to trust anyone on it. You don't have to vote on a poll. You don't have to debate it. You're just gonna see it, right? If Trump says, no, we're not going back in, then we're not 100% controlled by Israel, because Israel made it now crystal clear that they want us to go back in. On the other hand, if we do go back in, it's also crystal clear that we are 100% controlled by Israel, because we have no reason to go back in. I'm gonna come back to that in a second. We had no reason to go in the first place. But guys, at this point, it has become clear, and later in the program, we're gonna talk about even neocons are writing, checkmate. If we stay, if we leave, it's bad. If we stay in the war, it is an epic disaster, economic collapse impending. And Trump is willing to risk that. Why? It makes no sense other than Israel has ordered him, and he will do anything Israel orders him to do. Okay, so how are we going to go back in is the next question that we're gonna address. But first, I want you to know that his list of demands were not just the ones that Anna read. So yes, he says take out all their enriched uranium, but Iran has already offered that, to take it out of the country for 12 years. So what more do you want? That goes to what Anna said, which is they don't care about the enriched uranium, because Iran, this is their third time saying you could take out all the enriched uranium. They said it under Obama, they said it before the war started, and they're saying it right now in their latest offer. And every time Israel goes, no, rip it up, make sure that they can still have nukes, because that's our only excuse to go into this war. Right? So it's definitely Israel keeping us in this war when Iran has overtaken us, take out. Enrichment facilities, Trump already said we destroyed all of them. We have to destroy all of their ballistic missiles? Are we gonna stay there decades? What kind of insane standard is that we destroy every missile? But on top of that, guys, he says Israel must be able to control Iran's foreign policy. Iran cannot interact with Hamas or Hezbollah or any other proxy that Israel doesn't want. No country is going to hand over their foreign policy to another country. That's insane. You put those insane, well, that's a good point. John gave me a little bit of look there, John's our stage manager, and I thought, well, we put our foreign policy in Israel's hands, but that's only because our politicians are bribed and blackmailed into it. But you would never do it voluntarily, right? So, okay. All of these standards are purposely impossible, and yes, Netanyahu added regime change back onto the table. So no.
Then you go get your regime change,
exactly.
Bitch. You go get your regime change, bitch. Okay, Major Garrett asked him, you want to get the enriched uranium? Okay, great. Are you talking about US troops or Israeli troops? By the way, thank you for asking that question, Major. But the way he framed some of his other questions, I took issue with. Nonetheless, he asks, if it's necessary, meaning to get the enriched uranium, how do you envision the highly enriched uranium will be removed from Iran? Netanyahu responds, you go in and you take it, you take it out. He laughs. At that point, Major Garrett asks, with what? Special forces from Israel? Special forces from the United States working in tandem under international supervision? How? And here's what he says. because he means the US. He means US troops.
Of course.
He means the cannon fodder in our military. The dispensable human beings that he uses and abuses to his liking. That's who Netanyahu is, scum of the earth. Iran needs to save some of that heat for Tel Aviv, okay? I get the tactics with hitting the Gulf region, especially with the latest reporting, by the way, showing that Abu Dhabi was secretly attacking Iran alongside Israel and the United States. That was reported today. The UAE, Abu Dhabi specifically, though.
Okay,
yes.
yep.
All right, but let's get to what Netanyahu said in response to Major Garrett. He says, well, I'm not gonna talk about military means, but what President Trump has said to me, quote, I wanna go in there. I mean, he said that publicly. He said it, and I think he's right. Okay, so basically it's his way of saying the US obviously, because Trump, like a moron, says we have to go get the enriched uranium, essentially parroting the talking points, the bad faith talking points from the Israelis.
Yeah, and what he's trying to say is Trump's already on the record. Trump, you can't turn around. You already said it. And he continues, he said it, I think he's right. He's very committed to this. And I think that can be done physically, so obviously troops on the ground. That's not the problem. If you have an agreement and you go in and you take it out, why not? That's the best way. Well, first of all, we didn't ask why not, and although I can give you 1,000 excellent reasons, we asked whose forces. And look, Major Garrett, yes, I have tons of issues with how he conducted that interview. On the other hand, we got a lot of super relevant information out of that interview, and he's the only one that's asked, and he asked Netanyahu, US or Israeli troops, so attaboy. That was an excellent question. And you see Netanyahu saying, oh no, you guys are definitely going back in. He didn't say a word about Israeli ground troops.
That's exactly right. And look, it is not surprising to me that on the same day this interview with a notable war criminal was published, President Trump came out and flatly rejected Iran's peace offering. So Iran's proposal, which Trump again rejected on the same day Netanyahu's interview aired, made no mention of giving up their enriched uranium, right? So Iran is basically saying, okay, we can have a discussion about the enriched uranium in stage 2. But first stage, we're not talking about that. So here's what Trump said in response. I have just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. I don't like it, totally unacceptable. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, foreign ministry spokesperson, the Iranian foreign ministry spokesperson, defended the Iranian proposal as reasonable and even called it generous. It includes an official end to the war, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, withdrawal of all naval vessels enforcing the US blockade on ships and cargo ships going to and from Iranian ports, lifting of all US sanctions, a ceasefire in Lebanon, and an additional 30 days of talks to iron out the details. And then after that phase of the peace deal is culminated, then they can have discussions about the enriched uranium. Iran says that all discussion of its nuclear program will be subject of subsequent negotiations. And the Iranian document, again, was in response to the 14-point proposal that the Trump administration provided the Iranians a little over a week ago, if I'm not mistaken. Now, Iran took their time in responding to that 14-point proposal, clearly. And that shows you that they don't really feel this sense of urgency, because they've got some cards to play, namely the Strait of Hormuz, and the fact that if kinetic war begins again, if they re-engage in that way, Iran has threatened to take out more oil and gas infrastructure in the Gulf, which Trump certainly does not want.
Yeah, so guys, you're not getting a full picture here in the US of how bad it is, because our press at a bare minimum keeps debating Trump's lies. So like, oh, is the war almost over? Tons of people think the war is almost over. In fact, Wall Street thinks the war is almost over. And Trump just today bragged about Wall Street's at record highs. The war hasn't hurt us at all. And it's encouraging him to go back in because he thinks there's been no consequence at all. So the idiots in Wall Street believing Donald Trump's lies because the media is saying like, could be, yeah, it could be that war's almost over. And it's not, the economic consequences are bad, but we can debate it. We can debate. No, guys. gas has already gone up 50%. If we were covering this war like Fox News covers a Democratic president, every single cable news outlet would be like 50%, 55%, it's now gone up 60%, 65%. Oh my God, when is it gonna stop, right? And by the way, that would be somewhat justified. The price of gas is super important to the country, to all of us, to all of our families. But Israel wants the war, so you're getting super muted coverage about how disastrous this war is.
I think the American people get it. Let me turn to the latest Washington Post ABC News poll. So a Washington Post ABC News Ipsos poll conducted in late April showed that Trump's war in Iran is as unpopular among Americans as the Iraq war was during the year of peak violence in 2006 and the Vietnam War in the early 1970s.
Yeah, so despite the media just kind of soft pedaling it, and by the way, the Democrats soft pedaling it.
Totally.
Other than Ro Khanna, I don't see any fire breathers out there going, what is this? Why did you do this to the American people? Why are you listening to Israel? This is insane, right? No, shh. Instead, they're attacking Israel's opponents like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Anyway, so that's another story we'll get to later. But guys, on the deal, this is really important. There's three clauses that I need to emphasize here. Iran offered up reopening the Strait of Hormuz immediately. That's actually an enormous concession by Iran. They should save that to the end if they were doing normal negotiations. Hey, you give me this, you give me that, then I'll open up the Strait of Hormuz, because that's not just their biggest piece of leverage, it's almost their only piece of leverage.
It's their only leverage.
But it's gigantic, so they're offering that up first. So we should take that and run. That's a great offer. Second of all, behind the scenes in their discussions, they've already offered to take out the enriched uranium for 12 years. So it's not like that's a real issue. So if we get to the next 30 days, we already know what their concession is. So like those are the only two things we want as America. In fact, their enriched uranium, we really don't care about at all. They're nowhere near a weapon, but fine, even if you were to concede that we care about that, they've already offered up on a silver platter. So you get to the third provision that is by far the most important out of all of this. Iran demands a ceasefire not only apply to Iran and to US and Israel and to the Gulf countries, but to Lebanon as well. And that's the deal breaker, because Israel wants southern Lebanon. That was an enormous point of this war. Distract everyone, destroy Iran, keep them busy so they can't help Hezbollah too much, and have American media perfect squirrel. Here's your war. Now don't tell anyone what we're doing, the atrocities we're doing in Lebanon. So Israel is never gonna stop this war until they think they've solidified the theft of southern Lebanon.
No, look, Netanyahu isn't going to call for the end of the war unless he's incentivized to call for an end to the war. Iran is not going to give Netanyahu concessions. So give him a reason to want to end the war and read him between the lines. Okay, let's do one other angle to this story and then we'll take a break because I wanted to talk about some of Netanyahu's other comments. So let's get into it. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sat down for a lengthy interview with CBS's 60 Minutes. And during the course of that discussion, some interesting topics came up, namely, whether or not Israel is ever gonna stop suckling at the teat of the American taxpayer. And here's what Netanyahu lied about. He said, oh, totally. I really wanna wean Israel off of America's money. I don't believe it at all. Let me give you his exact statement, we'll discuss it. So he says, quote, I wanna draw down to zero the American financial support, the financial component of the military cooperation that we have, because we receive $3.8 billion a year. I think that it's time that we weaned ourselves from the remaining military support and go from aid to partnership. So I want to draw down and I want to suggest projects, joint projects for intel, no thank you, for weapons, for missile defense. Israel, I think, has, is a leader in this in the world. Many countries come to us for it, doubt it. Okay, I don't believe him. Especially since he was trying to get the United States to sign on to a 20-year MOU, which is again the yearly, military aid package that we give to Israel. Usually it lasts about a decade. He wanted to multiply that and make it 20 years instead.
Yeah, so it's not a question of whether you believe him, because we're going to show you that he told you that we're not going to end it. We'll get to that in a second. But first, he's saying in that part of the clip, give me all of your military support. So, we'll wean off the 3.8 billion, but I'm still gonna demand all of your intelligence, all of your military. If I ever wanna attack anyone, you have to give me everything I want. You have to give me defensive missiles for Iron Dome. You have to give me this, this, and this. So already right there, reporting it like Israel doesn't want anything more is 100% incorrect. And in fact, that's why I'm most angry at the media. But wait till you get to the second part. So, okay, great, you wanna end Israel's funding. We're doing notanother.com. We couldn't agree more. So you want to end it right now, right? No. So let me go to the next quote. He said, I said, let's start now and do it over the next decade, over the next 10 years. But I want to start now.
What is that?
Okay, so wait, are we ending it now or are we going another 10 years? Let me repeat. He said, over the next 10 years.
He thinks we're stupid, but he's gonna start now.
No, but
we're gonna start now.
He doesn't.
But over the next 10 years.
So does he think that the American people are stupid? Of
Yes,
course, that's why he's been bribing our politicians, our media, our pastors, everyone else to manipulate us and trick us into supporting Israel. That's definitely true. But there's a second component to it. He knows that Israel owns our national media, that all of the headlines will be, Israel doesn't want any more money. Israel's so generous and wonderful. Netanyahu says, we're not asking for any more money. They're so great. And that's exactly what happened today. Every headline makes it seem like Israel is being so generous to us. First of all, we don't owe them any money. Everyone in mainstream media is like, instead of asking us for money for 200 years, which we obviously owe them, they're only asked for 10 more years. They're so wonderful. No, they're not. We don't owe them a single day more or a single dollar more. And you're all celebrating that our overlord, our master, has said you will only be chained to them for another 10 years. But most importantly, Anna, this is such an obvious trick. He's worried that they're gonna lose everything in 2028 when a presidential candidate wins that is not in favor of Israel. The memorandum of understanding lasts 10 years, which they shouldn't have never had anyway, of unconditional aid, which is mental, right? And so he's like, we can't wait till 2028, so we need to sign another 10-year deal now. How do I get another 10 years? By pretending I'm not going to ask for any more money. And I know that the media works for me, so they will all lie on my behalf and pretend I'm being generous when I'm asking to rob the American people for another 10 years, which none of them want.
Yeah, look, the Israelis are proven liars. They're never honest about anything. Netanyahu is like the top liar of that country. But one final thing that I'll get into. I need the Israelis and their defenders to understand people hate Israel because they kill innocent people and they steal land. It's that simple. But according to Netanyahu, no. People hate Israel because of social media manipulation. Okay, here's what he said, quote, I think there's been a concerted effort by several states to basically vilify Israel. I think you're doing a good job yourself, Netanyahu. He continues, primarily in the social media and the standard media too, but that's less effective. Yeah, because you guys are buying up legacy media. We know that it's less effective, but let's continue. The effective thing is in the social media, and we've not fought back yet. So we will have to do that. Okay, what he means by social media is independent media, okay? He used to be able to get the major networks to serve as gatekeepers, protectors of Israel's treachery. But now, the media landscape is far more diversified thanks to independent media. And there are some outlets that won't shut up, that won't be intimidated. Ours happens to be one of them. So he says we haven't fought back yet. Oh, you guys have fought back. You guys have tried to get my husband fired from his job. You guys have played all sorts of dirty little tricks. It's not gonna work, bitch. It's not gonna work. So come at us. It's not gonna happen. We're not gonna shut up. I will scream from the rooftops about Israel's treachery if this place goes under. I will never stop, never. Netanyahu is the enemy, and I won't stop until every single American realizes that.
Okay, so have they actually tried to win in social media? Of course. So I'm going to give you some of the tactics in a second. But they're basically saying, this is a confession, saying, look, we used to have mainstream media schmucks like you guys 100% under our control, and we still do. And that's why you call all of our critics anti-Semites and try to ruin their lives. You're part of our Gestapo, and we appreciate that. But now social media is proving more difficult to contain. That is the one thing Netanyahu is absolutely right about. He's right, social media is very hard to contain. So how have they tried to contain it? Well, they tried giving $7,000 to every influencer who'll kiss their ass. They tried to bully everyone who doesn't agree, put them on a top 10 anti-Semite list, including Mr. Rachel. Miss Rachel is a top 10 anti-Semite. So they tried their usual bullying, Gestapo, thuggish terrorist tactics, destroy any American that dares to disagree. In fact, again, I had a speech this weekend. Every time I have a speech at a Muslim or Arab event, half a dozen people come up to me and tell me how they were fired from their regular jobs. Not media, not politics, because of a benign thing they put on social media. That Gestapo in this country is terrorizing innocent Americans every single day. But mainstream media is like, shh, not only are you not allowed to talk about it, if you talk about it, they'll send the Gestapo after you and say, oh, he's an anti-Semite, over there, attack him, destroy him. Because our mainstream media, Netanyahu's right, is the total bitch for Israel. They've been doing Israel's propaganda my whole life. As Israel attacks, takes more land, they're like, oh no, it is for self-defense. They are the victims. If you went and listened to mainstream media in America, you would think the Palestinians are occupying the Israelis, not the other way around. You'd be shocked to find out, no, Israel is the oppressor of the Palestinians for the last 58 years. Israel butchered the Palestinians in 1948, 1967, and ever since then. But so now social media is allowing that message to get out, and the $7,000 isn't working. So they bought TikTok, and that's what he means by we haven't started a fight yet. Larry Ellison, friend of the IDF, who likes to murder Palestinians and contributes money towards that, just bought TikTok. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do hand motions. Because hand motions are really problematic. Murdering 73,000 people in Gaza, ethnically cleansing 1 million people in Lebanon, not a problem. Not a problem at all. Let's condemn Israel's critics. So you try all those tactics, Benjamin Netanyahu, and all cable news anchors, and all of you powerful people in America that serve Israel like dogs, and we'll tell people the truth, and we'll meet you in social media and see who wins. My guess is we're gonna win because there's too many of us, and the dam is already broken, and we're already past the gates. So you keep trying to call the entire country anti-Semites, you try to bully and intimidate all of us, and try to destroy social media, and see how that works out for you, Benjamin Netanyahu, and the rest of you pigs in cable news and in the US Congress who all work for Israel.
All right, we'll be right back.
I picked those drapes in my first term. I just saved curtains.
All right, back on TYT. Cabbage writes in, when the petrodollar becomes a petro-yuan, Bibi will pull back because his biggest enemy is the US. So I hear people saying that, I don't think so. I think Israel doesn't think we're an enemy. Israel just sees us as giant suckers, a piggy bank to just rob, abuse, in every way humiliate.
Israel sees everyone and everything as an enemy.
Or something to be taken
advantage of.
Right. Yeah.
It's a treacherous country.
Don Dada Dragon says that enriched uranium wouldn't even end up in US custody. Israel would most likely take it for themselves, like they did when they stole our nuclear secrets. They didn't just steal our nuclear secrets. There's 600 kilograms of uranium that went missing with a Zionist in charge. Oh, but it was just a coincidence. That probably happens all the time. They also stole the switches that allow the nuclear weapons to trigger. You know who stole those? Who aided and abetted that theft? Benjamin Netanyahu, when he was a young Israeli operative in America, part of the Pinto Project. So they have stolen and stolen and stolen from us. They have betrayed us. They have taken our money. They've made us complicit in their moral crimes.
They called it the Pinto Project, really?
Yeah. It's amazing.
Okay.
Jenks Live Tricep of Fury says, when Anna wears the red dress, we have the white flag. We wave the white flag. Okay. WTF are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? People says, I love this TYT community. It's as simple as that. Crazy Lit Asian says, just wait for the Dow being over $50,000, then anything is possible. Yeah, by the way, we're almost there. So we're gonna fight back against the evil Israeli regime. We'll see who wins. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. CDN Norse Dog Dad, thank you for gifting a membership on YouTube. Let me just tell you about an outlet where you could really track the news better because it's really important. Ground News has objective reporting of all the different sides. So when you're trying to get what's really going on, you have to be able to see how the story is being framed. And that's why I'm recommending Ground News to you guys. It's an app and a website that pulls together reporting from across the political spectrum so you can compare coverage in one place. You can compare headlines side by side, see the bias distribution of the coverage, check the factuality ratings of the sources, and even see who owns the outlets reporting on. If you want to stay informed without getting played by media spin, Ground News is a really valuable tool. Go to ground.news/TYT, ground.news/TYT, or scan that QR code on the screen. Using our link gets you 40% off the Ground News Vantage plan. So check that out now. All right, Anna, what's next?
Robert Kagan is next, unfortunately, but also kind of fortunately, because he's willing to admit that the Iran war has been a total failure, something that he cheer-led and now, I guess, might regret to some extent. So let's get into the details. Robert Kagan, the co-founder of the Neoconservative Project for the New American Century, has confessed that the United States has officially lost the war against Iran, and ending the war might be the least bad option, as he writes. Now, before I give you the details of his argument, Cenk, your 2 cents.
This argument was shocking. This is one of the top neocons, Israel firsters in the country, and even he's waving the white flag and saying we can't possibly win. But wait till you see his alternative. Go ahead, Anna.
By the way, let me just say that this genius who's giving us his expert analysis here was one of the main cheerleaders goading the United States into attacking Iran. Genius, total genius, right? I believe Harvard educated, but couldn't figure out that Iran was gonna close the Strait of Hormuz. Was too much of a genius to figure out that Iran would attack oil and gas infrastructure in the Gulf region. These are the people who get paid the big bucks to share their analysis on foreign policy.
Yeah, Anna, I have a secret theory about this, which I want to share with you guys in a second, because it's not about their intelligence, obviously. They're all super smart. That's why they manipulated us into the Iraq war and the Iran war twice. But why is he potentially backpedaling out here? That's an interesting theory. But first, tell us why he recognizes it's over, we lost.
So the first thing to understand about this guy, Robert Kagan, is he's anything but a dove, okay? He's married to Victoria Nuland, who I've got issues with, but she previously served as Deputy National Security Advisor to former Vice President Dick Cheney. So that's who Nuland is. She was also the Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs in the Obama administration. Now, Kagan absolutely loves war, especially on behalf of Israel. In fact, he was a huge cheerleader of the Iraq war and does not see the Iraq war as a failure. In fact, in the piece, he said that the initial failure in Iraq was mitigated by a shift in strategy that ultimately left Iraq relatively stable, did it, and unthreatening to its neighbors. He means Israel. That's what he was talking about. Okay. But let's get into what he has to say about the Iran war. He does not have similar views on the Iran war. He believes that the United States has been defeated. In fact, here's what he says. Defeat in the present confrontation with Iran can neither be repaired nor ignored. There will be no return to the status quo ante, no ultimate American triumph that will undo or overcome the harm done. So he dives into the issue with the Strait of Hormuz, something that honestly a novice political analyst would be able to predict, but here's what he says. The Strait of Hormuz will not be open as it once was. With control of the strait, Iran emerges as the key player in the region, And one of the key players in the world, the roles of China and Russia as Iran's allies are strengthened. The role of the United States substantially diminished. Thanks, Israel, appreciate that. By the way, I mean, is that a major loss for Israel to know that US power has been diminished? He further writes, far from demonstrating American prowess, as supporters of the war have repeatedly claimed, the conflict has revealed an America that is unreliable and incapable of finishing what it started. That is going to set off a chain reaction around the world as friends and foes adjust to America's failure. Finally, Kagan admits defeat, saying that if this isn't checkmate, it's close. In recent days, Trump has reportedly asked the US intelligence community to assess the consequences of simply declaring victory and walking away. You can't blame him. He says, walking away now could seem like the least bad option. But Cenk, what is it that he genuinely wants?
So there's two things. He says in the piece, look, the only alternative is a full-scale invasion, right?
Genius, he's a
ground
genius.
troops, obviously American, not Israeli. Israeli lives are way too precious, everyone knows that. You American lives, on the other hand, expendable. So he says we can go big like that, but he doesn't make a big case for it, to be fair, right? He just says that's the only other alternative. But he even acknowledges, even in that alternative, like he says, if you just try to wipe out their civilization through bombing alone, now again, he's wink, wink, send me ground troops, right? But if you do it through bombing alone, they'll just bomb the Gulf countries' facilities. It'll take a decade or more to rebuild those. It'll be catastrophic economically. So now, okay, so he sets up that alternative, and that's one of the hidden motives of this piece, right? And he's getting everybody to pay attention to it because this is one of the top Israel First guys going, we lost, checkmate, right? So, but there's a second potential reason, Anna. And I think that the Israeli backers are splitting among themselves. I think that some of the Israeli backers are going, wait, why are we doing this? Because they all know, they are Harvard educated, not all of them, of course, but plenty of them, et cetera. They're, the guys at the top are very well educated, very smart, they know. So those guys are saying, look, we're gonna destroy the American economy. I'm not sure that helps us because a lot of us are in America.
Do they even care if it helps or hurts us?
No, they don't care about us. They're worried about their own money.
Okay.
Okay, because most of their money is in America. So some of them have begun to worry about that.
Oh, okay.
I know, and then they won't have enough to send to Israel.
Are you worried about your portfolio, Kagan?
100%. Okay, so that's part of what's happening here. But most importantly, a bunch of the Israelis have realized this is the wrong strategy. We're only gonna get dragged in further, and we don't have that many interceptors. I don't know why Netanyahu keeps going further into the war. Well, if Iran doesn't stop, they think at any point they go, okay, we're out of interceptor missiles, ceasefire. I took southern Lebanon, I took western Syria, ceasefire. But what if Iran goes, yeah, I don't give a damn about your ceasefire, no ceasefire.
You wanna know why? Because Iran is actually way more honorable than Israel would ever have us believe. If I were in Iran's shoes, I would still be bombing Tel Aviv right now.
Yeah, I don't
right
know why
now,
they're
at
letting
this
them
very
reload.
moment. Oh, you think that our 10-point proposal is garbage? That's what Trump said in response to the Iranians today. Okay, great. Well, let the bombing commence. We're gonna focus on Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
Until the Israelis say, please stop, please end the war, please, we can't take it anymore.
So Anna's not just saying that, because we're all greatly frustrated with Israel. It's strategic.
It's a strategy, yes.
Because what Kagan is basically saying right now is Anna's right. We can't keep going. What if they start leveling Tel Aviv? Well, hey, we got to get out of here, man. We thought maybe we could do an Iraq here and get the sucker Americans to spend trillions of dollars and lose thousands of men on our behalf, and so that they could do a regime change. But it looks like it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna work. The economy's gonna crash. We might even lose some of our precious money, right? So like this is a big problem, and in the end, it's gonna cause Israel, the only thing they care about on planet Earth, Israel, more damage. So maybe we got to backpedal out of here. So what you're gonna see, if I'm right, what you're gonna see going forward is a bigger schism between the different Israeli sides. Some going, hey, let's go further in and be maniacs and lunatics, and others going, why are we being lunatics? We already had America locked up. They didn't even know that we were robbing them blind for all these decades. They didn't know we stole all their nuclear secrets and their top secrets and their uranium, and we got them to pay for all our wars. Now you're making it obvious, you schmuck. Let's get the hell out of here so they don't catch us. And
you've been caught though. You've been caught.
It's too late. You're caught.
Yeah.
Just because they're not saying it on cable news, those bought bitches don't represent anyone. Okay. Oh, you didn't get caught by a 98-year-old watching MS Now. Congratulations. Okay. It's already over. But I like that splinter group because I want the war to stop. I want there to be peace. I want anything on earth that can stop the genocidal Israeli government that exists today.
That's true, but the only way for that to work is, again, the strategy that I mentioned needs to be carried out. And Israel is really lucky in that the very country that they fearmonger about as if they're vicious, barbaric animals has carried out this war with far more honor than the Israelis have carried out anything. So I haven't seen them target civilian infrastructure the way the Israelis do. I haven't seen them do anything other than specific strategic targeted strikes, which have worked, by the way. Targeting the oil and gas infrastructure in the Gulf has been very persuasive in getting Trump to agree to that ceasefire. The reason why he stopped bombing is because he's like, okay, the bombing campaign is only destroying the global economy because of how Iran retaliates strategically. So
no, there's no question about it. If anybody in media were honest, Israel has hit civilian target after civilian target in Gaza, Lebanon, Iran, hospitals, schools, over and over, entire villages at a time. If we really meant the word terrorist as it is defined, there's no question that Israel would be defined as a terrorist government, right? And who has tried to hit more civilians, Iran or Israel? Not close at all. Definitely Israel. Israel has killed about 100 times the civilians of Hamas or Hezbollah or Iran, and they have a worse civilian kill ratio. So if there was any objectivity in our news, they would all tell you that we're backing the terrorist state. And yes, it's not a matter of Iran being honorable. It's a matter of Israel being terribly dishonorable. And they never listened to a ceasefire. They violated literally thousands of times. They target children. And now Nicholas Kristof confirming in the New York Times, they're using dogs to rape Palestinian detainees.
Good for Kristof for reporting the truth about that, by the way. Dana Bash should acknowledge that reporting because she's the one who on CNN denied that Palestinians were getting raped by IDF soldiers.
That's because she lies for Israel all the time. She's not remotely objective, and CNN has her on specifically to lie on behalf of Israel. That's why they have almost all of their anchors. So now you see though that even the Kagans of the world are saying, yeah, those guys who are debating this issue on cable news don't even listen to our own puppets, because the reality is we've lost this war. And if the unspoken sentence is, if you care about Israel, we got to get the hell out of there because this is turning really bad for us. But will the lunatics in charge of Israel even listen to their own friends like that? No, they will not.
When we come back from the break, I want to talk about how the economy is responding or reacting to Trump rejecting Iran's peace proposal. We'll be right back.
All right, let's stay with our members on TYT.com. Nerd Ferguson wrote in, if we leave it's bad, if we stay it's worse. Have fun with that choice, Donnie. You did this to yourself. Well, him and the Israelis did it, but he also wrote in, they can go after Jankarana, but TYT is all of us. We're a community. Good luck taking every single one of us down. Here, brother. I love this community. I love how strong we are and united we are. Having said that, they will try. They'll try to go one by one. That's what they've been doing for decades here, terrorizing the American people and having mainstream media cover up their crimes inside this country.
I also want to just quickly say hello to the creative director of Force Field Studios. Her name is Catherine Siegel Levine, and she happens to be one of the individuals trying to get my husband fired from his job. So, hi, Catherine.
Yeah. That's because she's one of those terrorists who want to terrorize innocent Americans into compliance with Israel's demands. Catherine, I got news for you. This isn't Israel. This is America. If you want to serve Israel, go to Israel, okay? And get the hell out of our country. And if you say, hey, it's a Trump, dual loyalty, then shut up and represent America, care about America. No, you don't. Oh, beloved Israel, fire anyone who disagrees with. He doesn't even disagree with Israel. He doesn't have an opinion on Israel. Destroy the families of anyone who disagrees with Israel. That's why you look like the terrorist and you act like the terrorist. But we're not terrorized, okay? Even though you desperately want to do acts of political and psychological and financial terrorism inside America. I've got more on that in the next segment. Nerd Ferguson says, Panic on Funkatron. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. So a little bit later, I'll get to some of your comments about how there's Israelis trying to get you fired from your different jobs. You guys have written in about that because those terrorists are everywhere across the country, and mainstream media hides their identities, allows them to operate inside America, trying to get everyone fired who disagrees with Israel. And we got to call it out. It's enough. It's enough. I don't care what labels they throw at us. If you're going to terrorize Americans, you're the problem. We're not the problem for pointing it out. You're the problem for doing that kind of terrorism inside the country and having your dogs on cable news woof for you. All right, anyway, Saul Robel, we aim to please. That's a fun name. Thank you for joining us, brother. Fat Satter gifted 10 memberships. Titan of Olympus 03 also gifted 10 memberships on YouTube. Love this community, TYT strong. All right, go ahead, Anna.
All right, let's get into our next story. I want to give you an update on where the economy's at right now, considering we don't have a ceasefire or an end to the war. While neoconservative warmongers like Robert Kagan are willing to admit that the United States has lost the war against Iran and lost badly, it's important to know that the US isn't the only loser. The global economy is. And there's no end in sight because Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared on CBS's 60 Minutes that the war is not over yet. Here's what he said. The Iran war accomplished a great deal, but it's not over because there's still nuclear material, enriched uranium, that has to be taken out of Iran. There are still enrichment sites that have to be dismantled. There are still proxies that Iran supports. There are ballistic missiles that they still want to produce. Now we've degraded a lot of it, but all that is still there and there's work to be done. So how much longer can the global economy handle this war dragging on for months, maybe even years? Because oil prices rose today after Trump declared that he would be rejecting Iran's counter proposal for peace, calling it garbage. So US West Texas Intermediate Futures, they gotta find a better name, and Brent are both up around 40% since the US and Israeli-led war against Iran started on February 28th. City analysts wrote in their latest oil report that prices could rise further if Iran and the United States do not agree to a deal, adding that crude markets have been cushioned by high inventories, strategic petroleum reserve releases, weaker demand in developing economies, and intermittent signs of possible de-escalation in the Middle East. I should note that today, Trump apparently is spooked by how high gas prices already are, that he called for a temporary pause on all gas taxes. We'll see if that's actually carried out. But you know, Cenk, something that you've been mentioning a lot on the show, there's a huge disconnect when it comes to the stock market versus what we're experiencing at the pump. Because the stock market is doing stupendously. But when it comes to what we're paying at the pump, obviously prices have gone up quite a bit and will continue to go up as this war drags on.
So I want to go to graphic 9, right? So you see when the war started, the markets crash, Trump panics, does a ceasefire, right? and he keeps saying the war's over, the war's almost over, the war's almost over. We won. They're going to concede on everything. And the idiots in the market have the market go completely back up and back to record levels. Close to when Pam Bondi was like, the market's at 50,000, right? So here we are back at 50,000 in that ballpark. And it's given Trump false confidence. So it's a cycle of stupidity that is going to lead to disaster. Because Trump's like, guys, we almost won. And the morons on Wall Street are like, we almost won. Everybody buy, 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 buy. Yeah, we're gonna get bye-bye soon. And so now, because Trump thinks it's no big deal, he said today, I thought the market was gonna go down 20-25%. So he knew how much damage he was gonna do to America on behalf of Israel, but he chose to do that anyway. He said, oh, I took a bullet for this. Why?
Yeah, why?
Why? Okay, because you're making America take a bullet. You're making our economy take a bullet along with yourself and your politics. And we know why. I don't care if everyone in mainstream media lies to you. It's blackmail. The bribes alone doesn't do it, okay? A lot of people are bribing him. A lot of countries are bribing him. No, at this point, the way he's following Israel, no matter how much it's obviously going to his doom, and when he only cares about himself, that means the blackmail is worse than him being considered the worst president in history, okay? So what's going to happen in that market, hear me now, quote me later, is when we go back into the war, because Netanyahu just ordered us back into the war, and then Trump ripped up the peace deal, and Trump just said today, there's only a 1% chance we don't go back into the war. Markets didn't go down at all. They're like, no, the war's almost over. Bye, 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 bye. Okay, it's going to be a spectacular crash.
So Richard Wolff, economist Richard Wolff, made a statement that hasn't left me ever since I heard it, because I think it's exactly right. Markets are slow to react to reality, but then once they do, they tend to overcorrect. So you're 100%. Right, that crash is coming and it's gonna be
epic.
It's gonna be devastating to a lot of, I mean, look, when you really think about who's invested in the stock market, about 80% of the stock market is owned by the top 10% of this country, okay? But that doesn't erase the fact that a lot of working class Americans have the entirety of their retirement savings in 401ks or IRAs. Stock market crashes, these people who might be getting ready to retire are gonna suffer significantly. So I'm so angry about this whole situation. The fact that we are in a war that we should have never been in to begin with, even if Trump was able to accomplish, the objectives that he had outlined in the beginning of the war. Those are objectives on behalf of Israel. Those aren't objectives that benefit the United States in any way, shape, or form. We are carrying the cost, we're carrying the burdens, we're suffering the deaths and losses. Whereas Israel gets to bomb from afar and get us to do their dirty work for them as they're expanding their borders into southern Lebanon.
Yeah, so last two things here. I asked a couple friends who or invest on a way bigger scale on Wall Street, right? And I said, what the hell is going on here? Because these markets don't make any sense. And they said, the problem, Cenk, is liquidity. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. The wealthy now have so much cash, they literally don't know where to put it. They're like, what are we supposed to do? Withdraw all of our money from the stock market and put it into gold or cash, etc. No. We've been making so much money every year from the stock market, we just can't quit that crack, right? So, but when Anna's right, when you have the markets fluctuate like crazy, the pendulum swings wildly. That's why when Warren Buffett said, hey, how did I make this fortune? I bought low and sold high. And everybody thinks, well, why doesn't everybody do that? That's like gotta be the easiest thing in the world. Because they're monkeys on Wall Street. So when people are buying, they all buy like monkeys. And they all go right over the cliff. And when people are selling, they all sell like monkeys, right? Yep. And that's why we have these giant crashes, like the Great Depression in '29, like the 2008 crash, like the 2000 internet bubble. And now we're about to have another giant crash, in my opinion. Okay, don't ever invest based on what I say on the show. Make up your own decision. Timing is absolutely critical. I wouldn't listen to anyone on air about when or how to invest, okay? Now, but on a macro scale here, what's going to happen, that's my sense, is that they're going to overreact. So once the crash happens, It's going to be spectacular because all the rich people are going to think, I got to get my money out of there, and then I'll buy low once the market completely crashes. Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, get out of there, right? And they'll get to get out before any of you do, and your 401ks will be obliterated. And I'll add one last cherry on top prediction, and then the people in power will start talking about bailouts for the wealthy.
100%. Oh my God, it makes me so angry. Why? Why are you making me so angry? It's so true. It's so true, everybody. They always do that.
They're gonna do that in this case too. And they're gonna wanna bail out some of the Israel first guys who pushed us into this war in the first place.
No.
Okay.
No mercy.
Yeah, no. Oh my God, if Bill Ackman comes around looking for money, hey, you made a list, Bill, right? Of the college students who weren't sufficiently kissing Israel's ass and you promised to destroy their careers and their lives. Good news, we also have a list, okay? So, and our list can't do anything. We don't have any power, you're the billionaire, we don't have anything. But if you come asking us, the taxpayers, for money, then you're on the list. And I'll do anything to make sure Bill Ackman and his buddies don't get bailed out after they slaughtered our economy. And they did it to betray this country in favor of a different country.
All right, I think I want to take a break because our next block is going to be a party. It's going to be a block party. It's not actually. AOC versus Marjorie Taylor Greene. Do you work with people across the aisle to end a genocide? That's the real question that AOC is asking herself because she's not a leader. Anyway, let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Be nice to me.
I don't care if you're Christian. In fact, I will fight for you to have your religious liberty and practice your Christianity. I believe in that. I don't believe in Christianity, which means that you do not get to dictate the way I live my life based on your religion. I don't care what the Bible says. You have every right in the world. All those women who identify with your religion have every right in the world to not get an abortion, to not take birth control, but they do not have the right to dictate my life and what I decide to do with my body. I don't care about your goddamn religion. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says. You live your life in the way that you interpret the Bible. Again, I don't care, but you don't get to take the Bible and tell me, well, the Bible says this in this chapter, in this verse. I don't care. I don't care, I don't believe in it, and I have the right, based on our Constitution, to not believe in it.
No part of Gaza has been left unscathed. Ain't a whole lot left. I don't know why they need any more bombs. Let us be clear. The United States provided $18 billion in military aid to Israel. Netanyahu, indiscriminate bombardment, have killed more than 50,000 civilians, 60% of whom are women, children, paramedics, and journalists. All of this is against basic human decency. You don't starve children with absolutely no humanitarian aid getting into Gaza. It is a war crime. It is illegal for the United States government to provide Israel with more offensive weapons. History will not forgive us.
We've been on our phones too much. I feel like we just need to touch grass or something.
I told you. I mean, you know what? Let's actually do it. Let's touch the grass. Whoa. Andrew Yang? It's not racist, right? It's him.
Yes, it is I, Andrew Yang, out here giving money away as usual.
Wait, but literally?
Do you use a phone? Noble Mobile will cut your wireless bill in half every month, and you get paid even more if you log off, look up, and touch grass.
Oh, I actually have some grass if you...
I don't think that's the kind of grass.
Not that kind of grass, unfortunately.
Whoa, wait, what the...
Whoa.
I guess that kind of grass works too. All grass works.
All grass and we get cash?
Wait, did you see that, babe?
Noble Mobile, make it rain, girl, make it rain, make it. That didn't rain so good, but now it's raining good.
corruption, injustice, the system is rigged against you. Every day we're blasted by a flurry of terrible news from every angle, which can make it challenging to stay positive and know how to fight back. The Damage Report is your solution. I'm Johnny DeRola, and my daily morning show cuts through the noise and exposes the real damage being done to our country, the world, and how we can fight back against it. Corporate greed crushing workers? We'll name names. Politicians selling you out for their corporate overlords? We've got the receipts. Climate disaster, economic collapse, the rise of fascism. No spin, no establishment talking points, just the truth that you need to survive and resist. But it's not all doom and gloom. We'd love to have you join the Dragon Squad, our community of positive-minded activists who turn the day's news into positive action. With new episodes every weekday, listen to The Damage Report to get honest news, unflinching commentary, and daring coverage you won't find anywhere else. Listen to The Damage Report on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, because understanding the damage is the first step to fixing it.
This is such a, I think that this is like extremely political.
You are a stiff.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. And we're also live on X now under the Young Turks account. So check that out if that's your cup of tea. And we have one of our first commenters from X here, Brandon Thought. He said, this is my first time tuning in since Trump got elected for the second time. No hate to the community. I didn't like the pivot. It felt like pandering to the right. I do stand with unity, so I'm back. Okay, beautiful. Good. Now, do you see, Brandon, that we were trying to do unity from the first place on issues that matter, and we weren't pivoting to the right and trying to pander to them or anything like that? Anyways, great to have you back. And perfect timing, because today I'm gonna do Member Mondays after the show's over at 8 o'clock. And the topic is, what have you changed your mind on and why? I want it to be political in the first half an hour that's available to everyone. In the second half hour that's just for members, it could be about any topic. What have you changed your mind about and why, okay? So that'll be at 8 o'clock. Anna, what's next?
All right, let's get to our next story.
I personally do not trust someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, a proven bigot and anti-Semite, on the issues of what is good for Gazans and Israelis.
She puts this political facade and partisanship above actual morality at the end of the day. That's what I'm recognizing. She calls Marjorie Taylor Greene a bigot because of her statements regarding immigration and everything else. At the end of the day, though, what is worse, statements or somebody like Richie Torres who's actively funding and justifying a genocide for 3 years?
Sorry about that. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez drew some backlash over the weekend after she seemed to condemn the idea of working with former Republican House member Marjorie Taylor Greene on the issue of Israel and Gaza. Now, is political purity more important than stopping a genocide? You can decide for yourselves, but first you should hear AOC's full statement. Take a look.
I care about results. I care about results. Now, there are certain places where, certain areas where I don't think that we should ignore some folks' record on some of these issues, right? It's about where we trust intent, where we trust where those outcomes are going. I personally do not trust someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, a proven bigot and anti-Semite, on the issues of what is good for Gazans and Israelis. I don't think that it benefits our movement in that instance to align the left with white nationalists. I don't think it serves us. And so I think it's about looking at the context, the place, the results, the outcomes, intentions, and where we think that train would go.
I'm interested in knowing where AOC's train is going, because she has failed to secure a single win when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to economic policy, honestly, when it comes to anything. So her theory of change has not really borne much fruit, but I could be wrong. Cenk, your 2 cents.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little longer than 2 cents here because I want to respond to that clip. So I also want to know where her train of thought is going. She's slowly turning into Kamala Harris. What was that? long pauses because she's nervous and doesn't want to get any words wrong. Word salads about intent that are hard to decipher, and repetition. So I care about results. I care about results. Okay, I got it. So,
but do you?
No, that's where I'm going, Anna. So wait, if you care about results, Marjorie Taylor Greene actually introduced a bill that would have cut $500 million from the money we're sending to Israel, and you voted no. I care about results. I care about results. So Marjorie Taylor Greene is better on the issue of Israel than AOC is. So that's a fact. No matter how many people on the left will lie to you about it. Oh, no, but AOC is better on other issues. Great, hey, on other issues, I'm on AOC's side. On this issue, no, Marjorie Taylor Greene is definitely better. And she did it when her party was in charge. She said, hey, Trump is wrong, and she paid a huge price for it.
Huge.
When Biden and Kamala Harris were in charge and financing the genocide of the Palestinians, all we got from AOC was kissies for Biden and Kamala Harris.
In fact.
So those are all facts, super uncomfortable facts for a bunch of leftists who are all care about partisanship and their brands and don't care about Gazans. All right, go ahead.
Pause. I gotta actually, there's a difference between liberals and leftists. Anyone who's familiar with the politics of that understand the difference and the distinction. I'm actually really proud of most leftists that I've seen online who are actually incredibly principled on this issue. And for them, they're like, listen, I hear what you're saying about Marjorie Taylor Greene, her past, what her stance is on other issues. But on the issue of Israel, she came over to our side. And if you have an opportunity to work with people across the political spectrum in order to make progress on this issue, you should do it. The liberals, though, that's a different story.
Yeah, so look, all these terms get confusing,
but
I'm glad.
Important.
But I'm glad you're clarifying, because I think the great majority of the left is on the right side here, and I'm thrilled to see it. And you guys are awesome, and I love you for being able to figure it out, despite the people that I was referring to, some of the leftist hosts or left-wing hosts or whatever, right? Not like there's Breaking Points is great on it, Drop Site News is terrific on it, all the reporters, etc. There's so many people that are on the right side of this, but some people just can't let the partisanship go. It's like fried their brain, or they think it's valuable to their brand or whatever niche they're going for or something like that. But guys, this is not complicated. I'll get back to more of my thoughts on it in a second after Anna gives you more of the story. But the reason why it's not complicated is, what are we asking to work with them on? Are we working with them on them becoming president? No. Are we working on our mutual wedding together? No. Are we working on like immigration together? No. We're working on ending the war. So on what grounds could you possibly say no to that alliance? We're looking to free America from Israel's control over us. On what grounds do you say no to that? That doesn't mean you have to agree with them on the carried interest loophole. This is not at all complicated.
No, guys, and the other thing is, when people on the left realize that there's an issue that they agree with the right on, do you think right-wing members of Congress are sitting around asking this? Do you think they're having debates about, should we work with the people who agree with us on this matter? No, they understand power. They understand winning. They want to win. They want to succeed. So they don't have these ridiculous debates. I do think there's an issue with liberals and their obsession with partisan purity. And honestly, once you free yourselves from the shackles of seeing everything through the lens of partisan politics, you become liberated. You become more open-minded. You start to notice and see strategies that you can deploy in order to win.
Yeah, and you're so right, Anna, because there's this incredibly bizarre alliance between just a select couple of leftist hosts with liberal audiences that have migrated over from MS Now to online. And they're like cultivating this 80-year-old audience, like, yeah, Democrat, Team Democrat, hate all the Republicans. Oh, they're helping us get rid of Israel's control and end this disastrous war. No, reject them, yay, Democratic Party. Like, we're going back to the Hillary Clinton years. And you're totally right that even their own audiences are like, no, bro.
Yes, you're right. Okay, so in fact, I wanna show you some of the backlash that AOC did get. First of all, let me just note that Marjorie Taylor Greene did respond, and she said that AOC refused to vote for my amendment to strip funding for Israel. She can run her mouth all she wants, but votes are the only thing that matters, not a bunch of words and nasty name calling.
Facts.
That is facts, it's true. And I think it's important to hear from a Palestinian on this matter, considering the fact that Israel carried out a genocide of Palestinians in Gaza and continues to do so. So Wally Rashid is a Palestinian content creator. I'm a huge fan of his content, highly recommend watching his show. But here's what he had to say about the matter.
I'm talking right now about Israel's undue influence on the United States. She still treats that separate thing as just another issue. I'm asking you to at least recognize that there are people that are recognizing this undue foreign influence and others that just treat it as another one of their talking point issues. She puts this political facade and partisanship above actual morality at the end of the day. That's what I'm recognizing. She calls Marjorie Taylor Greene a bigot because of her statements regarding immigration and everything else, which personally I think are disgusting. If she's ever said something blatantly racist, I don't support that. At the end of the day, though, what is worse, statements or somebody like Richie Torres who's actively funding and justifying a genocide for 3 years? We're starting to make false equivalences as if words have equal weight to voting on genocide and then justifying the genocide you voted on. Words are not as big of a deal as voting on, justifying, and taking part in a genocide.
I agree with him wholeheartedly on that. And by the way, guys, one other thing that I'll say is I acknowledge that Marjorie Taylor Greene in her past has said some horrific Islamophobic things. But the one thing that has happened over the last nearly 3 years is a lot of Americans, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, woke up to the reality of Israel and what Israel is actually up to. And suddenly the wool has been pulled off people's eyes and they can see, or the heads, and they can see what's actually going on. And while it would be nice for Marjorie Taylor Greene to address every specific instance of her saying something deeply offensive, fact of the matter is she went on The View and on CNN and apologized for her rhetoric, apologized for the way that she would talk about Muslim people, right? And realized that she was part of the problem in our political system. You have to give her credit for that because it's not easy to apologize in today's political climate. But more importantly, the reason why I know she wasn't full of it on this issue specifically, on the issue of Israel, Gaza, and what's happening in the Middle East is because Marjorie Taylor Greene was willing to go against her own party and more importantly, the man she supported in every election, Donald Trump, to the point where he started basically telling her when she was reaching out to him about the threats she was experiencing as a result of their tiff, he basically said, you deserve it. Your son deserves the death threats because you dared to cross me. But Marjorie Taylor Greene did the right thing anyway on this issue. And to erase that, I think, signals to anyone else who might have a come to Jesus moment, don't do it, don't be public about it because you're not gonna get any positive reinforcement. No one's gonna applaud you for it. In fact, we're just gonna crush you over it.
Yeah, and so what does that do? That discourages people from coming to our side on the most important issues of the day.
Exactly.
And so, in fact, as I saw the whole thing, I thought, is she trying to help Israel, AOC? And I'll get back to that as to why. But first, we want to ask you guys, because some of you might disagree. Look, from our perspective, nothing wrong with disagreeing, okay? We hash it out and we try to get to the right answers. So on TYT.com, we're asking, should we reject MTG's help in ending the war and Israel's influence in the country? Yes, AOC is right. She's too toxic on other issues to have any relationship with her. That's getting killed so far. Small, tiny amount of votes. Whenever we would do this, we just start the voting now. So you can go to TYT.com now. B says, no, our house is on fire and we need all the help we can get on ending this war and our toxic relationship with Israel. And that's the one that's winning right now.
So let me give you a few more details and then I want to revisit the poll and see how it's doing toward the end of the segment, okay? Because people rightfully called out AOC's hypocrisy on this, right? So let's go to Kate Willett, who says, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a right-wing crank, but so is Ted Cruz. No one was even asking AOC to work with Marjorie Taylor Greene in the same way she did with Cruz. But the idea that you have to take a centrist position because a singular Republican sides with the left on one issue isn't even something AOC normally believes. And so she shares a screenshot of a CNN article regarding AOC's willingness back in 2019 to work alongside Ted Cruz in order to pass legislation banning members of Congress from serving as lobbyists immediately after they leave Congress. Later, by the way, she worked with Republican lawmakers in drafting legislation to ban members of Congress from trading individual stocks. Now, both pieces of legislation went nowhere, but the point here is that she was willing to work with all sorts of Republicans that we have issues with on a whole host of political issues. But when it comes to the topic of Israel and genocide and war, I can't work with Marjorie Taylor Greene because she's bad on other issues.
Yeah, see, unlike her, we won't be a hypocrite on this. I'm not gonna go and turn around and go, oh, look at that liberals. She worked with Ted Cruz. You should banish AOC forever. No.
We applauded her for it, by the way.
Of course we did, because
we care about the issue more.
Because think about it, guys. So that bill was on banning congressmen becoming lobbyists afterwards so they can make a lot of money by betraying us and selling us out. Why would I want anyone to vote no on that bill? I want them to vote yes. And if Ted Cruz is voting yes, as much as I loathe Ted Cruz, I'm gonna take yes for an answer. Honestly, on that issue, what kind of moron would say, no, I don't want your vote?
Right.
Because then you would only be punching yourself in the face. You would be hurting the cause that you are saying that you're in favor of.
In fact, Cenk, in the same appearance over the weekend, in the same statement that she made about Marjorie Taylor Greene, she went on to talk about the importance of working with people across the aisle. I'm not kidding. Here's the rest of it. Take a look.
I think it's really about what our outcomes are. And to be honest, there are some areas where things will not get done if they're partisan because they are anti-establishment. There is bipartisan consensus on keeping and protecting stock trading in Congress. And so it's going to require massive bipartisan consensus of people willing to come together across those differences to get it done.
How is genocide in Israel different, though? The establishment overwhelmingly supports Israel and will do anything Israel wants. So how is the stock trading situation any different from policy pertaining to Israel in the Middle East?
So I only have two potential theories as to why she's doing this. I'm gonna get to them in a second, but she called Marjorie Taylor Greene a white nationalist, anti-Semite, and a bigot. That's exactly what the establishment calls her, to discredit her opinion on Israel, which is the exact topic we're talking about. So you're okay working with Republicans across the aisle, whether it's Ted Cruz or fighting the establishment on stock trading, et cetera. Great, we agree with that, right? But you say, but on genocide, what? It's not important enough? On the war in Iran, banning stock trading is important enough to work with Ted Cruz and others on, but the war in Iran is not important enough to work on? In fact, you're gonna hurt the cause by having one of the leading right-wingers in the country that is driving millions of right-wingers to our side. You're gonna torpedo her efforts by calling her an anti-Semite, like her opposition to Israel is anti-Semitic. Well, that definitely hurts our cause.
Well,
so that's hurting the movement, not just Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay, but I've got a lot more. She says, what's good for the Gazans and the Israelis? Look, in the old days, I would have talked about the Palestinians and the Israelis, and I want two-state solution, and I still want that. But I'm not overly concerned about what the Israelis need right now.
Someone needed to say it.
Yeah, like,
someone needed to say it, Yuger.
Yeah, so she's still talking about like, yes, but we also have to protect the beloved Israelis. Do we?
Do we?
Okay, so that's not really my top priority right now. And she said Gazans instead of Palestinians. I don't know if that means anything. It's a little strange, but no big deal. Okay, I don't want to nitpick. Okay, but then she started talking about like intent matters, outcomes matter. But wait. The outcome is we don't want the war to continue. Marjorie Taylor Greene is helping us to try to stop the war.
Or we want to stop sending them money.
That's an outcome that matters a lot. But you said the outcome doesn't matter when you voted against her resolution.
She cares about results.
Okay, but so then how does that lead to the outcome or the results? Then you talk about intent. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene proved her intent on these issues by taking a political bullet for them.
Yep.
You can't prove intent any better than that we are willing to take on Donald Trump and the Republican Party. And intent you couldn't show when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were in charge.
In fact,
okay.
Let's not forget what AOC said of Kamala Harris during her speech at the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, in the lead up to the 2024 presidential election, because AOC flat out lied about what Kamala Harris was up to. Take a look.
She is working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire in Gaza and bringing hostages home.
Let us be frank. The Biden administration, of which of course Kamala Harris was part of, prepared, the runway for what we're experiencing today under Trump. There was no indication that anyone in the Biden administration was working around the clock to secure a ceasefire. In fact, the Israelis, after the election, made it abundantly clear that no one in the Biden administration demanded a ceasefire, demanded that they stop the brutal, barbaric activity that they were carrying out in Gaza. So
the establishment loved that speech she made.
Loved it.
The establishment loved her attack against Marjorie Taylor Greene. I see all these liberal establishment Democrats going, "Oh, way to go, girl! Okay, yay! War with Iran's great." I mean, it's bad. So but we shouldn't fight it too hard. We should fight the white nationalists harder. Yeah. Spare me. So, but nevertheless, I'm going to read at least one of your super chats here because I want to give the other side an opportunity to weigh in. Anthony Gramo said AOC has a 90% correct voting record on Gaza versus Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has voted 34% of the time with us. AOC, Tlaib, Omar are way better than MTG on this issue. You're just fundamentally wrong. Anthony, it's a good point that you're making. I'm glad that you're bringing that point in because I want to address it. So did Marjorie Taylor Greene vote the right way in the past? No, she didn't, okay, even on this issue. But she has now turned around completely. And since her turnaround, she does have a better voting record than AOC on this, but not Tlaib and Omar. Tlaib and Omar were one of only 6 people in all of Congress to vote with Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Correct.
And so did Summer Lee, and so did Al Green, and so did Tom Massey. So, but in Tlaib and Omar's vote in that issue, you can see that AOC could have voted with Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Summer Lee. She chose not to vote with them.
Right.
That was an active decision. It wasn't like no Democrat voted for it. So that point where Marjorie Taylor Greene turns around is important. And again, Anthony, I don't need you to love Marjorie Taylor Greene or agree with her on any other issue. But on this issue lately, she's been a ferocious fighter against what Israel's doing and against the war. And she's all over media spreading that message to millions of right-wingers, independents, etc. I see Ro Khanna on our side fighting all over media on that. I see Bernie from time to time. I see Chris Van Hollen, he should do more, but he's a great senator and doing the right thing. I don't see AOC at all.
I don't either.
Fire breathing on this issue, except she's telling me how I got to be concerned for the Israelis and then
she's keeping that powder dry, that's for sure. I'm gonna go to one final video here because you're about to see a Democratic member of Congress who's genuine in her concern over this issue and had her own thoughts about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's watch.
Shifting gears a little bit, I did want to uplift us for a minute and play some comments from your former colleague, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's watch this.
The American people have to open their eyes and deal with reality and deal with truth. And the truth is, look, you may have supported President Trump for 10 years like I did, like you have, but this is not the same man.
What's your reaction to seeing comments like that from Marjorie Taylor Greene, someone who's not always been, I think, as collegial to you as she should have been?
They are not just coming out like the other ones that you'd mentioned, where they're saying this action is wrong, right? They're saying, I am done with you. We should give them credit for that. The fact that they've had this wake-up call to finally seeing this con man, this corrupt, chaotic man for what he is. The fact that they understand that he never really had any principles outside of uplifting his ego.
I love that statement so much by Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, because again, look, there's two things at play. She understands that humans are complicated and they can change their minds. And honestly, we need to foster the kind of environment that encourages people, that celebrates people when they change their minds or when they evolve on an issue and come to the right side of an issue. You want to encourage that because you want more people to feel comfortable doing it. But the other thing is, Congresswoman Omar understands how you wield power, how you move toward progress, how you secure wins legislatively. You don't do it by shunning people over disagreements in the past. You do it with an open heart by welcoming people and being willing to work with people who come to your side on an issue. And that's what happened with Marjorie Taylor Greene. We didn't go over to her side, she came over to our side. And that should be celebrated, not condemned.
All right, last things for me, but they're all important. Look, the two potential reasons she's doing this. The smaller one is, some people think that she's gonna run for president, Ro Khanna is gonna run for president. Those are the two people in the Bernie Sanders lane. So she's taking a shot at working with MTG because Ro Khanna was on TV talking about working with MTG on the Epstein files and on the war, okay?
Wait, AOC is thinking about running for president?
Yes. Okay, so do you understand the positioning? Okay, and the second thing she went after was, no, it's okay to work with the Republicans on the stock trading thing. Some Republicans are throwing dirt on Ro Khanna on stock trading. Like no one else knows that, and it's not true. But it's curious that that's the one bill she said that's okay to work with the Republicans on. So this might be her like amateurish way of like angling for that lane. Okay, so that's my
run for a Senate seat. What are you doing?
And by the way, in that
run for a Senate seat. What are you doing?
And by the way, we're all on your side if you run for a Senate seat. Then you unite everyone. I know you don't want to unite, okay? But by the way, they asked for that question. Axelrod did about running for president. There was polite applause. You could check the tape for yourself. Then they asked about running for the New York Senate seat, and there was thunderous applause. Okay, that's her own followers.
Because the Senate seat makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and it helps the movement.
Yeah.
Stop hurting the movement, start helping the movement, then everybody's on your side.
That's not to say that there's no possibility for a presidential run in the future. I just think it's premature.
That's okay. So, anyway, that's a minor thing. It might not be that at all. The major thing to me, and this is what a lot of people are speculating, is that these are signals to the establishment. Don't worry, I'm on your side. When you need it, I'll call opponents of Israel anti-Semites and white nationalists, okay? When they need the vote, I might be there, I might not be there, right? And so, and don't worry, I'm a partisan all the way. So Richie Torres, a dog for Israel, never gets criticized. I looked it up, never criticized. Josh Gottheimer, one of the most corrupt Democrats, totally corporate, totally conservative, 100% Israel first, never criticized. But you're criticizing people who are fighting against Israel and against this war. And you chose this moment to do that. Look, I'll end on two things. One is Sean Ryan had a great line about this, and it's similar to the Palestinian brother we showed you there. He said, our house is on fire. So I'm not interested on any other issue until we put the fire out. We don't even control our own country anymore. So when we don't control our country, why are we having debates about other issues? Our opinions are irrelevant on those issues. We need to put this fire out first, get control of our country back, then go back into debating all these wonderful issues, right? And lastly, guys, think about what they're asking you to do when they ask you to reject Marjorie Taylor Greene. They make it seem like reject her as a human being, as a potential candidate, etc. But that's not the conversation. The conversation is, are you rejecting our help on this critical issue? She's out all over TV and media saying, stop the war, stop funding Israel. That is what we all agree with. As Anna said, she's coming to our position. Massey, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly have come to our position, and that's amazing. If you keep spitting in their face, that does not help incentivize other people to come to our position, whether they're going to vote in Congress or they're going to convince their millions of followers to join us. So on this issue, the actual thing we're talking about, not some theoretical, hypothetical other thing, why would we reject their help? That is utterly irrational. And you'd only do it is if you don't really care about this issue and you care more about partisan games.
Well, when we come back from the break, we'll head on over to the Senate, where a Senate Democrat, I would venture to say, is far worse than anything AOC has ever said on this matter. We'll talk about Senator Cory Booker and his emphasis on the importance of keeping Israel's military edge intact. We'll be right back.
All right, so varying opinions, of course, on this issue. Let's go to Super Chat. Magnus9450 says, MTG's first time acknowledging that Gaza was a genocide was when Trump said he wouldn't endorse her governor run. We don't want or trust her, and we wouldn't ask you to find common ground with Loomer. But brother, a couple of things about that. One, that might be the case, but I actually don't care about intent. I disagree with AOC on that too. I care about which way did you vote and what are you telling people? If Tucker Carlson, as he's telling everybody that we've got to get rid of Israel's control in this country, secretly loves Israel, I don't care at all. I couldn't care less. Why would I care? Okay, and so I don't know if you find that controversial, but even with Laura Loomer, if Laura Loomer's in Congress and she's gonna vote with us on getting money out of politics, I'll take the vote. What am I gonna say, no? Why would I say no?
I mean, Laura Loomer was vicious toward Trump as Elon Musk was trying to dismantle the CFPB. Would I work with Laura Loomer in order to protect the CFPB from being dismantled? Yeah, and I hate that bitch.
Yeah, that's called politics, baby.
Because I care about things outside of myself and my own feelings. I care about accomplishing things that make other people's lives better.
And so old school liberal Democrats, I love you guys, but please, you gotta snap out of this trance. Remember all the Democrats you loved back in the day, right? They worked with Strom Thurmond. They worked with Jesse Helms. They worked with vicious racists. So snap to that, okay? Depending on the issue. And I don't want to snap to that. I want on policies they cared about. So that's the hypocrisy. All right, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Jen and Anna with you guys. I want to check back on that poll either later in this show.
Can we do it now?
Okay, sure. Let's bring up the poll. So should we work with MTG or not? More voting on TYT.com. No, about the same.
Hasn't changed.
Oh, okay, just because we haven't updated the graphic. Okay, that's all right. That'll show us for coming back to it. All right, anyways, let's keep going.
All right, so we just, did a lengthy segment on AOC, but honestly, AOC is an angel compared to this guy.
I continue to support Israel having a qualitative military edge, the ability to defend themselves and offer deterrence.
Democratic Senator Cory Booker is committed, as you just heard, to maintaining Israel's qualitative military edge, which I was approximately today years old when I found out is a real law that requires the United States to arm Israel more than we arm our other allies, including other Middle Eastern countries. We'll get to the details of that in just a moment, but Cenk, your 2 cents.
Yeah, so Cory Booker is a giant sellout who works for Israel. I just wanted to make that super clear. Number 2 is why? Why do we have to have them have a military edge over all of their neighbors who they're viciously attacking?
Imagine saying that you want to maintain a qualitative military edge for a country that's been carrying out a genocide, that's been stealing land from its neighbors, that's now leveling southern Lebanon. I mean, imagine that's your priority. Maintaining the genocidal country's qualitative military edge.
No, this is a real analogy, and they can catch feelings over it if they like. And yes, obviously the Holocaust was on a different scale, but genocides are also important. And so it is like saying, no, we have to make sure the Germans have a qualitative military edge as they're taking the Sudetenland and going into Poland. And the Germans said the same exact thing. We're just doing it for self-defense. We have to protect ourselves. And if our senators at the time were like, we have to protect Germany, not Sudetenland, not the Poles, not the Jews, not anyone, but the Germans, and we have to make sure they have a military advantage. We would have been like, are you nuts? And I say to Cory Booker now, are you nuts?
So Booker was speaking to Kristen Welker, and she asked if Booker would support a temporary ceasefire deal that would not in any way address Iran's nuclear material. And Booker, interestingly, kept dodging the question. We can't show you all of his filibustering because it would take up the entire show, but here's the taste.
I wonder, for the sake of bringing these hostilities to an end, would you support a short-term deal with Iran that leaves the broader issue of Iran's nuclear program to be solved in later negotiations?
So remember, the Strait of Hormuz was not closed at the beginning of this conflict. This conflict has been a massive disaster, and Donald Trump himself is an embarrassment on the world stage. I hear it from allies all around the world. He has got us into a trap, and we're effectively in a stalemate with Iran. And the people that are paying the price is American military.
If that way out included a short-term deal that punted dealing with the nuclear program, is that something you would back?
Well, remember, I've been leading in the Senate with a handful of my other colleagues to end this conflict. That's what we're demanding. I am sorry that the United States Senate, Republicans who are leading that, have done nothing truly to hold President Trump accountable, to provide sufficient oversight or any checks and balances.
What exactly has Senator Booker done to try to end this war?
Oh, he's been leading on it.
He's been leading on it?
Yeah, because he said it on TV.
He's been leading a bunch of nonsense filibusters to nowhere.
Yeah, I mean.
Literally, he did a filibuster that had no point to it.
No, that was one of the funniest things that's ever happened. It was the most symbolic thing of the Democratic establishment that I've ever seen. He did a 25-hour record-breaking filibuster over literally nothing. There was no bill being discussed. I mean, he could have waited for a bill because there's plenty of outrageous bills, including the giant tax cuts for the rich, etc. But all of his donors are rich, and all of his donors love all those bills. So he didn't want to filibuster any real bill. He wanted to filibuster fluff and nothing and air. I mean, that is Democratic leadership 101. Okay, so on this, did you notice he never answered the question? Because he can't say, since he serves AIPAC, and AIPAC is his best friend, according to him, the guy who runs AIPAC. He can't say, well, we could leave without ending their nuclear enrichment program, because then he'll be a naughty boy and he'll have to get spanked. And so that's why he avoided that question like the plague, because he secretly agrees with trying to end their enrichment program. So the only thing he's allowed to do is attack Trump and the Republicans. The donors go, good boy, keep them divided, okay? But don't say anything substantive badly about the war, okay? Just say the war is bad and it's all Trump's fault. But if anyone says it's Israel's fault, no way, attack them and call them an anti-Semite and try to ruin them. Yeah, Cory, we see all these games, man. Like, you're from the 1990s, brother. You're still playing these games.
Totally.
Like, we can't see what you're doing and we don't see all the money you're taking and all the ass you're kissing.
Well, Israel bought 5,000, obviously.
Yeah.
Anyway, now Welker pressed him on military aid to Israel. Let's see how he handled that.
The US, of course, is partnering with Israel with this war. You joined a record number of Democrats, 40 senators, who recently voted against sending more arms to Israel. A similar effort a year ago only got 15 Democratic votes, for example. Are you now opposed to the US sending arms to Israel going forward?
Let's be clear, I'm opposed to a reckless war that has made the United States and Israel less safe, as well as our other Arab allies. I will not support arms to the United States or any of our allies, including Israel, in the context of a war that is endangering our national security and Israel's. I continue to support our US military being the strongest in the world. I continue to support Israel having a qualitative military edge, the ability to defend themselves and offer deterrence. But in the context of this war, I will not support more military armaments to conduct what I think is a disaster that's endangering American lives, Israeli lives, and as we see in the UAE and Saudi Arabia, our regional allies as well.
Wait a minute. Wow. That's the first time I heard the entire statement in context. So just to be clear, Senator Booker had absolutely no problem with the mass slaughter campaign carried out by the Israelis against the Palestinian people in Gaza.
Yep.
Just to be clear about that. So do you guys understand how much of a farce the identity politics is by these establishment Democrats who purport to care about the lives of black and brown people, as they like to put it? Does that look like or sound like an individual who cares about the lives of black and brown people? Seriously, seriously.
Yeah, so she asked him, should we stop sending arms to Israel? He said, let me be clear, and then wasn't clear at all.
Wasn't clear at all.
Then he immediately diverted to, I'm against this war. But she didn't ask you about the war. She asked you about weapons to Israel. And then he kept we shouldn't send weapons to Israel or anyone else in the middle of this war. In other words, when it's not about this war, yes, I'm gonna send them weapons. But in case you weren't clear enough, then he came in and said, yeah, they have to have a qualitative military edge, qualitative. Okay, so two things about that before we give you more facts on it. Number one, it's a genocidal government. And okay, forget the German analogy. How about when the Serbs are slaughtering the people in Kosovo or Bosnia? If we said, no, the Serbs must have a military advantage, or the Turks were doing to the Armenians, the Ottomans must have a military advantage. Why? They're in the middle of a genocide. Why would we want to guarantee their military advantage? But okay, put the genocide aside. Why does Israel have to have a military advantage and we have to provide it? Remember, their population is the size of Papua New Guinea. If Cory Booker was on Meet the Press going, Papua New Guinea must have a qualitative military edge. We've only sent them $320 billion and we've only attacked 7 of their neighbors and that cost us $8 trillion, but we have to give more to Papua New Guinea. You would have said, has he escaped a mental asylum? And of course, the reason why they're doing this is because they're not mental, they're corrupt. He's been bribed by Israel his whole career. Anna, back to you.
The first time anyone in our government uttered anything about maintaining or protecting Israel's military edge was when Lyndon Johnson informally committed to upholding Israel's qualitative military edge.
After Kennedy was killed.
Yep, very true. Interesting things happened in that assassination and the aftermath of it. Anyway, but the argument in favor of this is, well, poor little Israel. I mean, it's in such a hostile region of the world. It must have the strongest military in that region in order to defend and protect itself. Okay, so it wasn't until about 20 years ago that it became codified rather than just be an informal announcement by the president. And so in 2008, Congress formally codified Israel's qualitative military edge through the Naval Vessel Transfer Act, requiring that any American arms sales to other Middle Eastern countries not adversely affect Israel's military superiority. For decades, pro-Israel advocacy groups, including the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, have lobbied to preserve and expand such commitments to Israel's defense superiority. This lack of accountability continues to reshape the Middle East. By design, QME, qualitative military edge, blocks any Arab or Muslim majority country from reaching parity with Israel. True security, this is written by Jamie Hayes over at antiwar.com. True security cannot rest on permanent superiority. It requires accountability, reciprocity, and restraint. The very qualities QME discourages, and I agree wholeheartedly on that. I want to end on one last video from Cory Booker in that interview with Kirsten Welker. So let's hear him double down on his support for aid toward Israel.
So just to be very clear, you would vote to approve arms sales for Israel in a future entanglement if you thought that was necessary?
Again, we have a long-standing commitment to Israel having a qualitative military edge. I will continue to support that. I will not support this kind of war. And we have a nation now that's looking at our disastrous president, a disastrous leader of Israel, who in this war are hurting our nation, their nation, and that region. I cannot support this war effort.
A majority of Democratic voters would like to stop aiding Israel. 56% of Democrats say the US should decrease military aid to Israel, including 35% who say the practice should stop altogether. Cenk?
80% of Democrats have a negative view of Israel, but Cory Booker says, no, we have to take more of your money and give it to them. And not only that, we have to borrow money from China and you have to pay the interest rate the rest of your life, and so do your kids and grandkids, because we can't have the Israelis borrowing from China. Their money and their lives are so much more precious than yours. So shut up and give me your wallet, otherwise you're an anti-Semite. Okay, and you know what Cory Booker said in the leaked audio that we found out about his relationship with the AIPAC president? He said, quote, "We talk often and quote, text message back and forth like teenagers." That's so cute. I want to give you his AIPAC tracker, even though I want to tell you that this is greatly misleading. So he's gotten at least $846,000 from the Israeli lobby. But the reason why that's misleading is, as we found out through Larry Ellison's emails, the great majority of the money that they give is not through means you could track. They give it through dark money. Rabbi Shmuley told me after a debate I had with him, not a grain of salt, a boulder of salt, because I don't trust anything he said. But he told me that Israeli interests gave Cory Booker $26 million behind the scenes. So if you're wondering why their lips are permanently attached to Israel's ass, anything approaching that kind of money will get you subservience and groveling like you see from Cory Booker.
Embarrassing. All right, when we come back from the break, we're gonna switch gears a little bit. I want to fill you all in on what SCOTUS just did with the Voting Rights Act and what that means for gerrymandering. So come right back, I'll give you those details and more.
All right, I'm gonna go to YouTube members. So many wonderful comments, I can't get to all of them. All right, CC Bra says, you guys are the best when giving real news. I've turned some family members who are Trumpers onto your platform. Keep up the great fight, because we're with you 100, 100, 100. Thank you, we appreciate you. Jacqueline Enchando writes in, we shouldn't worship at anyone's altar. We need to focus on what's being done individually by congresspersons and how it affects us. We can hold everyone at arm's length so it allows us to step back. Yeah, it isn't about people and egos. And in fact, Randy Fine 8, my handle, wrote in and said, I learned a helpful mantra in a program I was part of for many years. Principles before personalities.
Yeah.
Here, yes, totally agree. Principles matter. And by the way, oh yeah, but our MTG and Tucker Carlson, et cetera, principled? Well, they proved it. If they weren't principled, they would have said, oh, Trump is right, war is great, we love Israel, we hate Iran, you should hate all Muslims, yay. But they didn't. Instead, they were principled. That matters a lot, man. And people not giving him credit for that is just, it's mind-bending. Jacqueline also wrote in, you're so right, Cenk and Anna, supporting this issue with the stronghold that Israel has on us can free us to power through what is actually important to our causes. Yep. We can't get anything done because Israel says, no, don't give it to the Americans, give it to me instead, okay? That's literal. DB says, keep up the good fight, TYT. I'm a premium member and don't have much money, but I'm willing to pay more to keep TYT going. See, that's why our army can't be defeated. I love you, brother. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. But like, it's little guys all across the country that are fighting back together. All right, I'll read more during the bonus episode. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Guys, in a couple of minutes here at the top of the hour, I'm gonna do Member Mondays so you guys can call in if you're members. And we're asking you, what have you changed your mind on politically and why? That's in the first half hour, because we're trying to figure out how do we change enough minds to get our government back, because we need the right and the left to work together.
Are you gonna participate?
Oh, sure, yeah, I could do that easily. Yeah.
Juicy.
Okay, and in the second half hour, member calls continue, but that's just for the members, and we'll do a little bit of fun there. What have you changed your mind on in your personal life? So either way, if you want to call in, tyt.com/call, tyt.com/call, right there. All right, Anna, what's next?
What's next is our electoral system is just messed up, terrible, disastrous, and it looks like it's just gonna keep going in that direction. So let's get to the details. The United States Supreme Court has gutted the Voting Rights Act, thus paving the way for more gerrymandering and political cheating, if you ask me. Honestly, in a political system that feels less and less representative of the American people. So Some believe that President Trump has scored a major political victory that could help Republicans minimize their losses in the midterm elections. However, others are arguing that this could backfire and galvanize Democratic voters. Now, before we get to the details, Cenk, your 2 cents.
Yeah, I think that it's a bit of a disaster. And I think the most important point is one that isn't partisan. I'll get back to that in a minute.
So let's first touch base with the Voting Rights Act, make sure we're all on the same page in understanding what that is before we move on to get to that Supreme Court ruling. So the Voting Rights Act sought to end Jim Crow era discrimination in our political system. So specifically, the law sought to end obstacles that Black Americans, Black voters were facing when it came to casting their own ballots. It also has something to do with gerrymandering, right? And in this particular Supreme Court case, the topic of drawing up districts based on racial demographics is what was being challenged. So late last month, the Voting Rights Act was effectively dismantled by the Supreme Court. They ruled that it is illegal or against the Constitution for lawmakers in the state of Louisiana to essentially create a new majority Black congressional district. Now, unsurprisingly, this ruling was split along ideological lines. It did pass 6-3, meaning the 6 conservative justices voted in favor of doing away with the Voting Rights Act. Now, Jonathan Martin from Politico said of the decision, the Supreme Court may argue in gutting the Voting Rights Act that they're creating race-neutral districts, but the practical reality of what this means is starring political leaders and, more to the point, Black voters in the face, staring, white Republicans fracturing African American districts to unseat mostly Black Democrats so they can elect more white Republicans. So that was Jonathan Martin's take. Before I give you more details on this, do you agree with that take, Cenk? Do you think that's what's gonna happen here? Are they gonna dilute these majority Black districts and draw up districts that essentially will be more favorable to white Republicans?
Definitely, that's not a question.
Yeah,
and they know that, everybody knows that. So the question is, do you choose to emphasize the white part or the Republican part? Because the Supreme Court said, we're not gonna emphasize the white part. We're gonna say they're picking based on Republicans, so you're allowed to pick based on politics, hence it's okay.
But why? Why are they allowed to? Look, I think gerrymandering is wrong, period. I think all of it should stop, okay? Yeah. But it's not going to. And so why is gerrymandering to help a political party cheat somehow constitutional, but drawing up districts based on racial makeup isn't?
So the Supreme Court isn't entirely wrong about that, with a giant asterisk, right? So they say, look, how you pick your congressional districts is a political question. It's not a question for the Supreme Court. It's a question for the different states to determine. That's a very fair point for them to make, okay? Now, the problem was, the reason why they passed the Voting Rights Act is because the southern states back in the day were saying, oh, okay, then if it's a political question, I'm gonna draw it up so that there'll be no Black representatives, there'll be nobody who is in favor of integration. Or will only make segregationist districts. And then Congress had to come in overall and go, no, the southern states are not allowed to do that because we can tell that you're picking based on race. And back then it was purely based on race, right? So they had to address that, they didn't have a choice. Now, at the same time, I would say, as with all of affirmative action, there has to come a time when we stop doing that, right? When we stop picking based on race, whether it's to help white folks or to help Black folks or to help anyone, right? So, but we can't do that as long as gerrymandering exists.
Exactly, that's the point that I'm trying to make. I'm not saying that I find it to be okay to draw up districts simply based on race. But I also think in a environment where that's considered unconstitutional, then gerrymandering, which I sum up as political cheating, should be outlawed, period.
Yeah, there's no question. So that leads back to the asterisk, the giant one, right? So the Supreme Court ruled in Bush v. Gore in 2000 that, hey, every vote in every state has to be equal to one another. That's why we've got to stop the counting in Florida because of the irregularities there, we're worried that they're going to have an outsized influence and their votes are going to be different and more impactful than a vote in Wisconsin or Wyoming, right? Now, I think they cheated massively in that case. They violated their own states' rights principles, et cetera. But that is a precedent now, okay? And so I would use that precedent to say, no, gerrymandering is unconstitutional because it means that our votes are not equal.
Exactly.
In fact, our votes in a gerrymandered district are nearly pointless, worthless.
Yes.
Right? That comes with an asterisk too, which we'll come back to. But that would be an excellent case to declare gerrymandering unconstitutional overall.
No, finish your thought because I'm super engaged in what you're saying.
Okay, so now the reason why that has an asterisk is, okay, so we want to get rid of gerrymandering because it's splitting up our votes. Shoot, you made me stop and then I forgot the second asterisk. So you keep going and I'll come back to the
all right, so let's get back to this. Now, there are, of course, some conservatives, including this conservative lawyer, Hans von Spakovsky, who, by the way, served in George W. Bush's administration. They're praising the Supreme Court's decision here. So why don't we take a listen and see if he says anything that persuades us?
What happens if a consequence of this decision is fewer black members of Congress?
Well, if they want to get someone elected, look, if they affiliate with the Republican Party, black candidates will get elected. We've seen that.
So they have to become a Republican in some of these red states to have a chance of winning?
The point of our Constitution and the Voting Rights Act is that everyone is guaranteed an equal opportunity to vote. They are not guaranteed success in the candidates that they think should be elected.
Okay, and look, I could be wrong about this, but I feel like there's a lot of assumption going into the commentary surrounding this story, like the assumption that, let's say you have a majority black district, they're only interested in voting for black candidates. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think they're interested in voting for people who represent their best interests. Like, it's not that complicated. But anyway, what do you think about what he said there, Cenk?
Yeah, so on the surface, equal opportunity to vote sounds great. I'm totally in favor of that. But what he's actually doing by backing gerrymandering is ending your equal opportunity to vote. And think about it, if you gerrymander, to some degree, it has to be racial. Why do I say that? Because the parties now have been so divided on racial lines, not completely, but especially with African Americans, nearly completely, that if you say, hey, I'm eliminating Democratic districts, almost by definition, especially in the South, you're getting rid of black districts, right? So, and if you say, hey, by the way, I'm gonna add black districts because it's proportional to their population in the state, well, there's a lot of fairness to that because it's proportional, but then you would be getting rid of some districts that were represented probably, very, very, very likely, by white representatives. So the minute you have gerrymandering, the racial issue becomes impossible to avoid. So how do you avoid it? You end gerrymandering, and so then you have logical districts where there's black people, white people, Asian people, and then you can't complain, well, I need more black representatives in the state. No, you need to win those elections,
exactly,
okay?
yeah.
And if they happen to be black, great, love it, right? But they don't need to be black as long as the elections and the districts are fair, right? So gerrymandering makes the districts unfair by definition. And if you're not aware and you still think it's a partisan issue, remember in the blue states, we also gerrymander, so the Republicans have almost no voice, right? California, we're about to wipe out almost every Republican there is in a gigantic state, right? Yeah. And are there Republican voters in the state? Of course there are.
Who are gonna be disenfranchised by that.
Yeah, 35, 40% of the voters, that's tens of millions of people disenfranchised in California who are Republicans. And obviously that goes true for Democrats and black voters in the South and in many other areas as well. And finally, the asterisk that I was talking about, Anna, is, look, that was in regards to how it's gonna affect elections. So the Republicans think, oh great, we're wiping out all the Democratic districts. But hold, what you're doing is you're spreading your voters even thinner, right? Because in order to have more Republican districts, if you had a district that was 70% Republican, you've got to distribute like 15% of that to another district so you could win a second district. But now you've made that district only 55% Republican.
God,
Do you see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying. And this is part of the reason why I'm black-pilled, right? I mean, people are up in arms about this story, as they should be, because it's a further dismantling of our democratic process. I get that. At the same time, our democratic process has yielded fewer and fewer benefits for the American people each election cycle. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I just hate all of this, and I do think that gerrymandering should be banned. If you're gonna pass down a ruling like this, all you're doing is putting a weird Band-Aid on a gushing wound that undermines our democratic process. Do away with the gerrymandering. That is what should be challenged in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, so last two things for me is that Hans von Spassky guy has been spanking it over, like getting rid of your ability to vote since the Bush era. I covered him 20 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, and he hates the idea of fair elections. So it's so ironic when mainstream media brings him on. Tell us about fair elections, Hans von Spassky, who spanks to unfair elections. Okay, it's just like the greatest irony there is. And remember, why is he so animated by that? Because he's a right winger or he's a Republican? No, because he's part of the establishment, and they love taking your votes away, and they love taking your power away. They don't want the grassroots deciding on the Republican side or the Democratic side. So guys, the best description of gerrymandering is, instead of the voters picking their politicians, the politicians get to pick their voters. Once the politicians pick their voters, we're screwed. None of our votes have any meaning at all. It's all one big joke. We must end gerrymandering for everyone. All right, revolution's next.
Participate in Member Mondays and have live on-air conversations with Cenk? Well, if you're a TYT member, you can. And that applies whether you're on tyt.com or YouTube or Twitch. Just go to this website, tyt.com/call. If you're not a member on YouTube, Twitch, or tyt.com, well, you can sign up on tyt.com right here. Otherwise, if you're already a member somewhere, click instructions. Now scroll down. And the first thing you'll see is that you need Discord. What is Discord? Discord is basically a messaging app for internet communities. It has all these different channels where you can send messages or even hop on voice calls and talk to people. We have what's called our own Discord server. And the first step is to download Discord. So back at tyt.com/call, just click on discord.com or the links for the app stores. But if you're on desktop, you just click download, and then it'll download over here. Click on the link and you'll download and install Discord. It'll look something like this. Now you need to get the TYT Discord server. So at tyt.com/call, you'll see there's a direct link toward it. Click on TYT's Discord channel. And it'll take you right here. Bingo, bango, welcome. You'll see all the values and policies and everything. Now you need to connect your subscription to Discord so Discord knows you are a member someplace on the internet. If you're on YouTube or Twitch, just click user settings in this little gear wheel. Then in the menu, find where it says connections. Once you clicked on connections, click this little view more button and you'll see YouTube and Twitch. If you're a YouTube member, click the YouTube icon. If you're a Twitch member, click the Twitch icon. Once you click, it'll open a login window and just select the email address that you use for your paid membership on YouTube or Twitch. Once you've logged in successfully, it'll give you a little message that says it's connected. At that point, you'll probably have to close Discord and reopen it, but you will see here that you are connected on Twitch or YouTube. If you're a tyt.com member, it's slightly different, but it's still very easy. If you're a tyt.com member, just scroll through the channels till you see the Verify Me channel. Click on that and enter the username that you use on tyt.com. Once you do that, a member of our customer service team will verify that you are a member on tyt.com and tell you, all set, thank you for your membership. Once you see that, you've done it. You may need to just shut down Discord then reopen it, and you'll see all these little locked members channels. All right, so let's say it's the day of the show and you want to participate in Member Mondays. All you need to do is scroll down until you see the channel called Member Mondays Live. Click on it to enter the audience. When you're in the audience, you'll look like this. You'll be under where it says Audience. If you want to participate in the show and be on stage with Cenk, just click this little icon that says Request to Speak. And don't forget to open the chat by clicking on this little conversation bubble. And you'll be able to follow the chat as it happens and talk to Kara and try to get on stage. If Kara pulls you on stage, she'll basically just make you speak on stage. And you'll be up here and you'll be live and you'll see Cenk up here with you and Kara up here with you. Don't forget to unmute yourself so you can talk. Blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. You'll see that it's working if there's a little green thing around your face as you're talking. And yes, I'm Meghan McCain on Discord. Once you're done, you can disconnect, hang up, or Carl will move you off stage. If you're having trouble hearing or seeing, you can just click these little buttons and change what your input is and change what your output is. I'm a total dork, so I have way more inputs and outputs than you do. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial on how to participate in Member Mondays. See you Monday and have a great day.
All right, guys, welcome to the revolution. We're doing Member Mondays today. The question we're gonna ask you guys, and you can call in through, as you saw in the tutorial, tyt.com/call. The question is, what have you changed your mind on politically and why? Before we get to some callers, I want to read some comments that I promised you guys. There's so many, and I'll probably spill over into the bonus episode with them. But in Peace for Peace wrote in, I'm an assistant professor of a small religious college in upstate New York, and recently an outside speaker speaking at the college referred to Israel's actions in Gaza as a genocide. As a result, the president of the college is calling for a conversation in an email to the college. The clear implication from the email is the use of the word was inappropriate, like the word anti-Semitic, bigotry, hate were used, and it implied the speaker was disingenuous. She said this conversation may result in changes to the rules governing outside speakers. So on Friday, we had a conversation with Rami Al-Gandour. He was supposed to speak at Rutgers engineering graduation, and he was canceled because he had positive comments about Palestinians on social media. So college campuses are now the most oppressive places in the country. It's not because of racial harassment or sexual harassment codes, which was something that was a big issue back in the 1980s, 90s, etc. No, nowadays it's purely based on Israel. If you say anything that's critical of Israel, or even just positive about Palestinians or Arabs or Muslims, the administration will crack down on you in almost every college, whether you're a speaker, a professor, or just a student. I went on a college tour recently with my kids, and students came up to me all the time, not just Muslim students, black students, white students, and all saying we can't say anything about Israel. And it's because there's an Israeli Gestapo in this country. And they go around, and all the heads of schools are now panicked because they know the #1 way to get fired is to defy Israel in any way, shape, or form. And by defying Israel, we mean allowing anyone to speak on behalf of Palestinians is considered defying Israel and a fireable offense for any leader of a college in America today. If anyone tells you otherwise, they're definitely lying. Definitely, every college is canceling pro-Palestinian speakers. They're terrorizing their own students, and they're all doing it. I'm not saying 100% of the colleges are doing it, but I'm saying an overwhelming majority of the colleges are doing it. And we have literally hundreds of examples from different colleges. If you speak out against Israel, there will be consequences here in America for American citizens, because we don't control our own country. Instead, it's run by a bunch of terrorist supporting, terrorist sympathizers who act like a Gestapo inside this country and try to brutalize anyone that doesn't kneel to Israel. A country the size of Papua New Guinea in its population that should be utterly irrelevant to us, but instead we're made to serve them. That's exactly why we do this show overall called The Revolution, because we need a political revolution to free us from Israel and from the entire donor class so that we actually have our representative democracy back. Okay, I've got more coming up, but I want to go to our callers. So, Cara, who's up first?
We have Lynn from South Carolina.
Hey, Lynn, what do you got for us?
Hey, it's Lynn's. One, I appreciate everything you guys are doing, and you guys are doing great work. So what I'll start off with saying is I have changed my mind on not being a problem for my elders. And let me explain, because I was born and raised in South Carolina. Lindsey Graham has been my senator for as long as I've been conscious enough to understand what Congress is. I turned 18 in 2016, but proceeded to get into EMS, spent time in my communities, got my medic 6 months before COVID shut down. So I ended up spending a lot of time not being in politics. I was complacent, not voting, and just following orders. January 6th changed me. I didn't think anyone could see it as anything other than a coup. I thought we could do better. I thought we all saw what was happening, but it appears we didn't. Or others like me were just complacent. I started reading, I started pondering, I started critically thinking about the world and geopolitics the best I could. I changed my mind on Gaza, war, socialism, all that jazz. Now I speak up for those with disabilities, the disenfranchised, Black and brown people, ignored, abused, and as a white Southerner, I can assure you I have made myself a problem for my elders. And I'll say before the bombing of the girls' school, my dad and I almost had a knockout, drag-out fight about Trump possibly using, what he was doing. And when I texted him saying, I know you didn't vote for this, he didn't respond. And for my dad, that means he had a lot to think about.
Interesting. So I love every part of that story, but give me one more thing. Was there any one thing and any impetus that began the change, didn't necessarily cause all the change, but like the equivalent of taking their finger out of the dam?
I will say that it probably was a lot slower for me because of my religious upbringing and all the stuff that I had to deal with that. But honestly, being on the streets and seeing how COVID was so mishandled really, really started to push me away from our government, especially ruby red colonial state like South Carolina.
God, that's so interesting. Okay, all right, I love it. That's a perfect answer. And thank you for calling in. Appreciate it. And
thank you.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, am I going to give you what I changed my mind on? Of course, but that's actually a very target-rich environment. So you know what? Since I love these comments so much, I'll read a comment between each caller. Stiff Upper Lip said, "In no way would I choose MTG over AOC, but the truth is the truth. I heard a lot more from MTG about Israel than I did from AOC. I want AOC to be better. I think she has a much better future in front of her than MTG, but she needs to grab it." I think that's a really great way of putting it, and a good, thoughtful, and open-minded way of looking at it. And I totally agree with you. I think AOC has an incredible future. I just want her to do things that, okay, look, the movement cares about, but okay, let's put aside the movement. Like, find your authentic voice and do that instead of constantly trying to please the establishment and DSA and establishment and DSA. Just who are you? Give us that and it'll be plenty good enough. All right, let's go to the next call. Who's next, Car?
Brian from New Hampshire's back.
Oh, okay, great.
Hello.
Hey.
Thanks for having me again. I'm going to keep showing up as long as y'all will continue to allow me to voice my opinion.
No problem. What do you got today?
Two quick items. Conservatism, I've changed my mind about, and Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi first. I generally have the same opinion that most everybody at this network has, but I do want to give her one bit of credit when it came to how HR1 in the 2020 Congress. I didn't think she'd ever bring that forward to the vote. I knew it was going to fail. They probably knew it was going to fail. Like, they always find people to fail it, but she still did bring forward HR 1 to help, campaign finance reform. So I changed my mind about that. And then on conservatism, I used to think that conservatism would conserve things that may be of value to me, but ultimately, I think the conservatism of like the last 20 years is all about conserving money and power for the rich and nothing else. Like, if you look at every single contested election, you can probably trace those core principles to that. And I argue that you probably can't come up with one counterexample. And those are the things I changed my mind on. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, brother. Although ironically, I'm going to slightly disagree with you, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, meaning that it's still your mind. So you're the one who changed it, right? So, but real quick, on Pelosi, I hear you. HR 1 was a terrific bill, and yes, they did pass it in the House. And after they did, we told you on the show, the reason they passed it is because they know for a fact there's no way the Senate is going to pass it in its entirety. It has getting money out of politics in it. Oh, there's no way that the Democrats want to pass that, let alone the other senators. And there was a bunch of other things that were such good provisions in that bill that I knew it had no prayer in the Senate. As usual, I was told by progressives in that case in Washington, oh no, Cenk, Nancy Pelosi really means it. She's going to get Chuck Schumer to pass it. And I was like, yeah, all right, see how that turns out. But I was wrong about that bill. Speaking of the topic of being wrong, I thought that they were at least going to pass a third of it, maybe half of it, because it protected voting rights in the bill too. And that's actually important to Democrats as a party because it protects them a little bit, because otherwise you could pass a bunch of provisions that make it harder to vote for Democrats, as the Republicans are partly doing now, right? And they were so incompetent and greedy and awful that they couldn't even pass that in the Senate. They passed none of it.
Yeah, it was awful. I thought too that there would be some protection for the Southern voters and the like, but
yeah, and instead we got nothing. And then on conservatism, so you're totally right about the facts, and that's why I'm not on the right. And the only caveats I'll give you is that it's the Republican politicians voting for all of that. 76% of Americans, all Americans, including independents and right wing, want to raise taxes on the rich. Republican politicians constantly lower taxes on the rich, and that is over 50% of their own voters don't want it either. Okay, but they do it because they're sellouts, just like the establishment Democrats. But also, you do need conservatives because it's a balancing act between tradition, what do we want to keep, right? And change, which is inevitable, what do we need to change? And conservatives overdo it as a general matter in principles by saying we shouldn't change anything, generally speaking. Not always, but almost always. And then you could argue progressives overdo it by saying we should change everything, right? And we need the two to fight to get to the right answer. The problem is that's not what's happening. Instead, we're having two sets of people pretending to represent us, but not representing us at all. They're not fighting over change or not change. They're fighting over, how to effectively rob us all and give all of our money on the left and the right to their donor class. So you see what I'm saying, that even though you're totally right about how the conservative politicians are voting now, and that's why I never vote for them, that you still need conservatism as a philosophy.
Yeah, I agree. And like the last 20 years, that's sort of been the theme. But actually, the conservative position when it comes to foreign policy in the U.S. would be to actually not get into wars. It's only after really World War II where that kind of flipped. And one final thing, John McCain, when he ran against Obama, and I can't help but think if he would have won, he was actually fighting then for campaign finance reform. Like, believe it or not, if you go back and look at the record, that was his #1 issue, and that was before Citizens United. So anyways, that's all I've got to say. Thank you again. I don't want to take up any more time. There's plenty of other callers. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother, appreciate it. But that's a great example of something you change your mind on. And that's what we're asking you to call about, tyt.com/call. What political thing have you changed your mind about and why? By the way, he's right about John McCain. He was part of McCain-Feingold, which is part of what Citizens United was dismantling. So would he have actually gotten money out of politics? Probably not. he by that point he'd become a pretty normal, corrupt Republican politician and was one of the biggest warmongers in the country. So, but yes, he does deserve credit for his stance on money in politics, going back a long time before Citizens United. Okay, before we go to the next caller, let me give you another comment. Jeremy writes in, these are on tyt.com. You're also right, thank you for taking that risk. You won me over early. You've earned our trust, in my opinion. Also, Anna, did you get your library care package? Okay, I'll have to ask her that another time, Jeremy. It's reading the second half of that blind. But thanks, guys, for all of you who are saying, hey, we get it now. You were right. You were trying to unite people on really important issues, and that's how we build winning coalitions. Guys are amazing for saying that. We appreciate you. All right, Cara, who's next?
Dana from Southwest Washington State.
Hey, Dana.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to let Cenk know that I changed my mind on my point of view towards conservatives and trying to find more common ground with them after watching the program for a while. My family are all conservatives from the Midwest, but I live on the West Coast and I'm a progressive, and we just became so alienated, being divided by all the culture war issues and everything. And so I have tried to bridge the gap a little bit more with the conservatives in my life, because you guys have explained how much of a value that is. And plus, if we view people as being in a cult and want them to deprogram, we should be open to when they do agree with us on certain issues. So that's what all I had to say today.
So hold on, I want to address that, but before you go, so how did it go when you wound up engaging them?
Kind of mixed reviews. Like with my family, I try not to get too confrontational. I just kind of gently question, why did you do this, or why do you support this? And I kind of get, the generic talking points repeated. But with members of the community that I live in now in Southwest Washington, I'd get a lot more pushback. But then as I kind of continued with the conversation and kind of drifted it into different areas, I found that we have a lot of common ground on other issues and other like moral values. It's just politics that's off the rails. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, totally right. And the reason why the politics is off the rails and what's dividing us is because that's the point of the propaganda, is to divide us, to make it so partisan, so political that we hate each other and can't talk to each other, even to find out the things we agree on. And so Dana, it's not like I didn't go through the same kind of conversion that you did, right? Because if you've been watching the show a while, I used to rip Republicans' heads off, rhetorically, verbally, politically, right? And when it's called upon, I still do that. I do that for all the politicians that deserve it. But we lost the last election. And so there's two reasons why I turn around my attitude, not my policies, is we lost the last election, then you gotta win people back. And you can't win them back by ripping their heads off. They're gone forever and you can't get them. You have to reach out. It absolutely positively requires a different strategy. And second of all, I realized for the first time that they were open to it. And they'd never been open to it before because all they got was propaganda from television. So all they had was talking points from Sean Hannity in their heads. And so we couldn't break through. Believe me, I tried in 100 ways to break through and I couldn't. And so when I came out after Trump won and I said, look, it's terrible that Trump won, but exciting news. Some of these guys are actually open to listening for the first time. When I first said it, I didn't realize why. I figured that out a little bit later, which is that, because they're watching online media, and online media has a wide variety of opinions, and it's not that conveyor belt of talking points from Sean Hannity anymore. So I saw that opening for us to be able to actually unite on these issues, and it turns out that as folks are being really nice, and you as well, and acknowledging, hey, maybe we saw it right, that they are open on war, on Israel, on Epstein files. And then when you dive in deeper, you find out, oh my God, they also agree on paid family leave and anti-corruption and higher wages. So there's a lot of agreement that the powerful have been trying to stop us from finding out about. And so I'm super glad that you went through that process. So I gotta give you guys my number of things I've changed on too. But first, a couple of quick ones from Twitch and then I'll take another call. No Math Dragon said, in other words, Israel is not finished in Lebanon. That is his interpretation of what Netanyahu said on 60 Minutes. He's absolutely right. Green New Deal Dragon says, Trump is on Epstein-made leash. He's going to grovel to Israel like a dog. That it does appear to be what's happening right now. Texas Socialist says, already interesting. Texas Socialist says, I'm only an accountant, but I've never understood how a country in debt can fund another country. And then, of course, of my fun socialist accountant friend, you're absolutely right. We can't. We literally have to borrow money to give to Israel. So why don't they borrow the money? And that's a question that's never been asked on television. It's a question that's never been asked in the New York Times or any other mainstream media outlet, because of course it would be anti-Semitic to ask Israel to pay its own bills. All right, who's on next, Cara?
We have Adam from North Virginia.
Hey, Adam.
Hi, Jen. Good evening. I'm going to answer your question, and I'd like to ask a couple of questions after that, if that's okay. So the very first time I voted was in 2016. I was a low information voter, so I voted for Hillary Clinton, which I kind of regretted in hindsight. For the next 2 years after that, I think I fell, victim to the idol worship of, just the Democrats, kind of the ones who made it to Congress. We had high hopes, and I still believe in some of the accomplishments that they got. But in hindsight, what I think I've changed my mind on is really you can't really trust anyone all the way, and it's kind of a black pill. So that's what I feel like I had my mind change on with respect to politics. And my questions to you: how do you resist being blackpilled, especially now with all what's going on in quote unquote the left, in the left spaces? And do you think this internal fighting would yield a better candidate for the next cycle? Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Really good story and great questions. So first, your last question. I think all this fighting is great for the party. So sometimes we take the brunt of the attacks, and it's not great for our show and our network and all the people that work here. But we've got to go through that process, because if we have fake kumbaya, we never hash out who's right, who's wrong, which direction should we go. Should we go in that direction or this direction? And then at the end, they anoint someone and go, okay, now you all have to vote for him. And then we're screwed. No. Even if it's at personal cost to us, and even if it means that we're fighting a little too much from time to time internally on the side of the left and the Democratic Party, we need it. It's much better than suppressing all of the differences and then having some person in power tell us who to vote for at the end. No way. How do I resist being blackpilled? Well, that one for me is kind of easy, because I'm driven to make a difference. And you could say a lot of things about that. Who the hell do you think you are that you could make a difference? That's an arrogant thing to think or to say. And is that a waste of time? There's a million bad things you could say about that. But and people have throughout my life. They've told me that I shouldn't try to make a difference, that it's arrogant and haughty and etc. I probably heard, who do you think you are, more than, I don't know, probably anybody in the country, okay? And my answer to that is, well, it turns out I'm me, and that's what drives me. And if you don't like it and you don't want to try to make people's lives better, then don't do it. I'm not judging you for it. But if you want to judge me for trying to make a difference, I don't care. Kiss my ass. I say not to you, brother, and not to you guys watching, but I say to those detractors, those critics, etc. I don't care what you think in that regard, because you're not me. You're not driven in the same way that I am. You don't have the same feelings that I do, right? So I want to help people. So that's a long way of getting to the answer of why I'm not blackpilled, because if you want to help people, a black pill is the worst possible thing you could take. Because it means by definition, you're not going to try to help them. Instead, you're gonna sit on your couch. Here's what's gotten accomplished with people sitting on their couch, historically. Absolutely nothing, literally by definition. If you don't try, you won't be able to succeed. That's why optimists have such an enormous advantage over pessimists. How can pessimists get anything done when they think they can't get anything done? They lose the minute they start. Whereas optimists, since they believe they can get things done, they try harder and harder and harder to actually get them done. That's why optimists always win at that. Now, they don't always win every single battle. In fact, they lose most battles, but you win in the long run because you're the only ones who could ever accomplish anything, since you're the only ones trying. All the pessimists already went home. So they have absolutely no chance of winning and no chance of accomplishing anything. So I'm not gonna go into that camp. And secondly, and this is really important, guys. So here's the thing I changed on, just like you, brother. In the beginning, I thought these are real folks like us, not fake politicians and elitists, etc. When these progressives and the Just Democrats get into office, I mean, I'm the co-founder. I named the group. So did I believe that they were going to get into office and do wonderful things and change the system? Absolutely, I believed it more than anyone. And I asked you guys to believe it. And like you, I still believe in it, but we have hit a pretty long bump in the road here. And so I can get bitter about that and withdraw, but you know me, instead I double down and learn from the mistakes that were made. And it wasn't just mistakes, we had wonderful victories and a lot of great positive things we learned. And again, those Just Democrats have done a lot of good things in Congress, right? And they're uncorrupted, they don't take corporate PAC money, etc. So lots of good things there. But what happened was, I thought they were gonna care as much as we all care, and that they were gonna organically go in and fight the establishment because that's the right thing to do. That they were gonna go open the door once they got past the gates so that others could get inside the gates and make a bigger difference. And what I didn't expect as much as I should have is, no, they don't necessarily think like us. And power is a hell of a drug. Oh, it is intoxicating. And the positive reinforcement of your colleagues and of mainstream media, oh, that's a drug everybody gets hooked on DC. And when mainstream media and your colleagues yell at you, which you guys never see, well, you see the mainstream media part, but not the colleague part. And I don't know that from behind the scenes, and that makes their brain melt. So I'll tell you the lesson I've learned from that in a second, but I want you to understand the phenomenon. When you send in nice people who are progressives into Congress, what happens is all their colleagues get together. It's like a psychology experiment, short line, long line. You remember that? The one where they ask you what's the longest line, and if everybody else in the room picks a shorter one, you also pick the shorter one 9 out of 10 times. And that's what happened to almost all the Justice Democrats that went in. So they went in, and first Nancy Pelosi offered AOC money, and AOC was a hero and turned it down, right? So they had the right principles, and they had the right intent and the right morality. That's super important. Give AOC credit for that, huge credit, okay? Then they started saying, now, you're not going to disrupt that event. You're not going to vote that way, are you? You're not going to say anything negative about your colleagues in the media, are you? Because only a really mean, terrible person would do that. We thought you were better than that. Oh my God, that worked like a charm on almost all of them. All melted. And including Bernie, let's keep it real, he's not a Just Democrat, but the minute you accuse him of being unkind to Joe Biden, he's like, oh, Joe, I love you, Joe. Joe's my best friend. Is he? Is he? He hasn't acted like your best friend. So I'm not trying to rub it in, I'm just telling you the state of affairs. You know, one person who resisted all that was Marie Newman. So Marie Newman was in Illinois. You see me every once in a while. Now she'll come on the show. Oh, she's on the new board of Rebellion PAC. The new board is me, Cara Eastman, and Marie Newman. And I love that board for Rebellion PAC, rebellionpac.org, where we get populist candidates that run on popular issues and win. Anyway, Marie voted against, for example, further funding of Israel when that was considered unacceptable, thermonuclear, total third rail. And they're like, and 4 Democrats tried to browbeat her and they're like, how dare you? We're all voting this way, you have to vote this way. And she was like, no. Okay, and then AIPAC eliminated her. $4 million in a tiny congressional run, and they just outspent her and she couldn't get her message out. But there are people of principle. All right, we're gonna keep the rest of the callers for the bonus episode for the members. But before we go, I've got to tell you the things I changed on. So first off, I changed on what we're just talking about here. So now when I talk to candidates, it's not relying on their goodwill. It's a little bit more transactional, to be honest with you. And what is the transaction that I'm asking for? That you actually deliver, okay? Whenever I get into politics, I never ask for any money. I never ask for any title or roles or anything. Oh, I want this in an administration, or I want this. No, I ask for them to actually deliver. And if they don't deliver on the priorities and the policies that they themselves are talking about, and that they claim that they're on the right side of, if they don't deliver, then I come and tell you. And so, and I'm very honest with people. If you want me to help you, if you're running for office, you got to do the right thing. And if you don't do the right thing and you don't back these very popular, progressive, populist policies, then we're going to come for you. So carrots and sticks, carrots and sticks. And I've learned that the hard way. Just trusting that people's ego won't take over or that they won't get tricked by the Washington bubble is not a right way to go. They will get tricked, and their egos, unfortunately, definitely do get in the way. I'm keeping it real, okay? That's been my experience. All right, the other things I changed on, I'll go real quick. I can give you a specific example, like the death penalty. I've told you guys this many times. I used to be pro-death penalty. In fact, I had an hour-long debate with Mario Cuomo on the Young Turks. Yeah, I said Mario Cuomo, that's how old this show is. And I thought I held my own pretty well. Okay, that's what I always think. I don't know if you can go back and watch that old debate or listen to it because it was on the radio. But I changed my mind later. Why? Because I'm vengeful enough to kill the right guy, but I'm not stupid or irrational or immoral enough to kill the wrong guy. And it turns out 4% of the people on death row were innocent. And we would have killed, I think, at least 76 people who were innocent. Oh, no. No, we're not gonna kill anyone who's innocent. So that's why I'm against the death penalty. And you could say, hey, Cenk, you should have known that before, that mistakes could be made. Fair enough, fair enough. But now we know it definitively and empirically, and then you've got to change. So, and of course, have I changed on big things? I used to be a Republican when I was growing up. I did a pro-war rally at Penn. I've changed massively, right? And so, and maybe that might be a reason why I give people more grace. I mean, how the hell did I know that all of mainstream media was lying to me and that Ronald Reagan wasn't a cowboy and he wasn't building a shining city on a hill and he wasn't doing peace through strength? I had to learn that the hard way by finding out, oh no, all they ever do is start wars. Balance budgets, they never balance budgets, Republicans. No, media was lying to me. The media told me that Republicans balance budgets and they keep us safe. When in my lifetime, that has never been the case. Literally in my lifetime, not a single Republican president has ever balanced the budget. And all they ever do is push us into wars, no matter how many times they promise us that they won't push us into wars. So did I change my mind based on overwhelming empirical evidence? Hell yes, I did. And then finally, I changed my mind on religion. I mean, that's a big doozy. So that's a long story that you guys have heard a couple of times already. So yes, you've got to keep an open mind because look, I'll leave you with this for everybody that's watching this publicly. If someone comes and tells you that you're wrong and they actually have good evidence, be open to it because the worst thing you could do is stay wrong. it's one thing to be wrong accidentally, but when you choose to be wrong because of ego, that is not gonna help you in your life in the long run. Let your ego go and be open to new facts, new evidence, and to be able to, treat yourself like a scientist. Do these experiments. Did that work? Did that work? Where's the evidence? Let me see how this comes out in the balance without prejudging and thinking, I must think this or I must think that. So hopefully that helps. But I'll take more of your calls and we'll talk it through more in the bonus episode and read some of your super chats and your member comments as well. So in order to become a member, you hit the join button below on YouTube or tyt.com/join. So we'll take a quick break and I'll see you guys there.